American Comics. My Warhammer Simulator Chapter 361 to 380. Huh? You motherfucker, dare to say that again? At this moment, the burly black strongman suddenly glared at Luo Sha's direction. He casually threw Doom, who was wearing power armor, towards the street buildings a dozen meters away. Bear God protect me, Panther God protect me, Tiger God protect me. The black strongman, completely naked from the waist up, suddenly let out an incomparably angry roar. The next second, accompanied by the booming sound of 2 feet stomping on the ground. Behind his entire person, one after another, phantoms of ferocious animals emerged. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, Frostmourne, which was spinning rapidly through the air, also arrived in front of the black strongman. He calmly raised a palm and pressed it firmly between the wide axe faces. Then, taking advantage of the situation, he twisted his sturdy body and swung Frostmourne back towards Luo Sha. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the terrifying firepower from the stormtrooper squad continuously bombarded the black strongman's tall body. The explosive impact of the repeatedly exploding shells made him couldn't help but stagger backward. However, it was still impossible to break through the protection of those layers of ferocious animal phantoms. However, just as Luo Sha, who had raised his hand to catch Frostmourne, was planning to drive the power armor and charge head-on towards the black strongman. Taste the wrath of the Latvarian people, accompanied by a sudden low roar not far away. Doom, who had just been thrown out by the black strongman, quickly adjusted his state. He drove the power armor out of the building ruins, the tattered edges of his dark green cloak fluttering in the wind. Doom's 2 metal palms suddenly raised and placed in the middle of the ceramite chestplate. Then, several fingertips pried open the edge of the chestplate, forcefully lifting it outward. Clang! Just below the chestplate, the 4 arc reactors located between a large number of electronic muscle fibers immediately emitted terrifying buzzing and dazzling brilliance. In an instant, 4 incomparably thick shock beams blasted towards the black strongman, who was firmly suppressed in place by the explosive shell firepower. Ah! The black strongman vaguely let out a strange cry. His arms quickly retracted to his chest, trying to make a defensive stance. However, only a few seconds later, the layers of animal phantoms behind the black strongman's spine completely dissipated. Immediately afterward, even his entire flesh and blood body gradually melted into the continuous shock beams. Clang! After the black strongman's sturdy body and life completely disappeared. Doom's magnetic boots couldn't help but stagger backward a few steps. He barely closed the ceramite chestplate that had been lifted open on his chest. Strands of snow-white heat dissipation mist continuously rose from the gaps in the power armor. Looking at it, it was actually quite spectacular. Doom, where is the other Zodiac? Luo Sha, who had re-equipped Frostmourne, strode forward, carrying the blood scythe. He stared at Doom in front of him through the eyepiece and asked. That old man was just observing the battle nearby, but now he has disappeared. I originally thought he had gone to deal with the rebels, but judging from the sounds coming from the surroundings and the battle report in the communication channel, the other party doesn't seem to have taken action. Doom said to Luo Sha without hesitation. Luo Sha nodded his metal helmet upon hearing this. He turned around and waved his metal palm at the 3 members of the stormtrooper squad. Gao Qi and the others immediately replaced the ammunition for their bolters and began to quickly search the nearby streets and buildings. Only at this time did Luo Sha turn his gaze back. Looking at Doom, he continued to ask, Doom, how is the combat data for the power armor you modified? It still requires a lot of adjustments and redesigns. In order to maintain the energy flow of the arc reactor, the power armor with reduced electronic muscle fibers and servo devices has slowed down my reaction speed. I need to find a balance between the two. This is not a successful attempt. Doom slightly shook his metal helmet. He quickly said to Luo Sha in front of him. However, just as Luo Sha was about to continue asking, Iron Man David's mechanical voice suddenly transmitted into the 2 people's communication channel, interrupting the conversation between the 2 sides. My lord, Mr. Doom, The rebels with high fighting spirit have occupied all the important facilities in Harlem City. The remaining Harlem army has chosen to surrender, which means that Harlem City has been successfully liberated. As soon as Iron Man David's voice fell, Luo Sha and Doom looked at each other through the eyepieces. Subsequently, two metal arms collided heavily together. Even the inside of the helmets of both sides faintly emitted a burst of light laughter. Not long after, on the streets of Harlem City, which were covered with corpses and ruins, countless civilians who had calmed down and the soldiers of the rebel army walked hand in hand through the heavy smoke that had not yet dissipated. They kept humming traditional songs with slightly sad tunes. In order to commemorate the relatives, friends and compatriots who died for the liberation of Latveria. While everyone was picking up garbage and cleaning up the damaged streets, Doom was also under the help of Iron Man David, preparing a speech and declaration to all the nationals. And Luo Sha, who was carrying the blood scythe, and the stormtrooper squad had been shuttling through the streets and alleys of Harlem City. They kept searching for the Zodiac who had lost his trace. However, until night fell once again, accompanied by the ubiquitous broadcast. Doom's inspiring and passionate speech and declaration of founding a nation. Luo Sha and others still did not find any trace of the other party. Finally, Luo Sha, who met with Doom again, made a corresponding judgment. Either the last Zodiac saw that the situation on the battlefield was not right and chose to escape before the battle. Or, the other party used teleportation technology to return to Leviathan's lair. That is, inside that alien spaceship of unknown origin, planning to make a comeback with Leviathan's leader, Gemini. So, Luo Sha and Doom, who wanted to completely eradicate the roots, re-prepared for the next battle. And for the necessary safety and smooth progress of the action, Luo Sha, who was planning to use the enemy's teleportation technology to carry out boarding tactics, even had Iron Man David transport the six-armed Terminator. Not long after, Luo Sha changed into the Terminator armor with the help of a team of automatic servo robots. And Doom had also researched some results on the existence of golden ornaments. These golden ornaments themselves do not have the ability to teleport. They are only equivalent to a beacon. Judging from the previous situation, the teleportation technology controlled by Leviathan may not be able to distinguish between friend and foe. If that Cancer Zodiac is not lying, then anyone can easily use it. The method is also very simple, just activate the internal signal. At this moment, Doom, wearing a dark green cloak, turned his power armor slightly. He slowly said to Luo Sha, who was checking the 4 servo-mechanical arms. And hearing Doom's words, Luo Sha said without raising his head, "If that's the case, then let's carry out a special boarding mission. After all, this is also a traditional project in our team." Buzz buzz buzz. Accompanying it was a subtle tremor of distorted air. And streaks of purple energy halos in midair resembling code. An automatic servo robot, fitted with a heavy logging gun, gradually materialized with a glimmering metallic body. It quickly rotated the black muzzle located above its metal shell, continuously analyzing and surveying the extremely unfamiliar surroundings. After a long while, the automatic servo robot, still unable to detect any trace of enemies, immediately began exploring the surrounding area as necessary, and gradually realized that it had been teleported to a metal hall of considerable size. Clack clack clack. The automatic servo robot slightly rotated the sensor located in front of its body. It moved without hesitation towards the exit of the metal hall. After the automatic servo robot cautiously entered a narrow corridor with walls covered in purple metal, it still did not encounter any attacks from enemies. Therefore, the automatic servo robot couldn't help but wave its mechanical tentacle, emitting a low, tearing hum in the air. Then, after hesitating for a moment, it actually rotated its body and retreated back into the dimly lit metal hall. Buzz buzz buzz. Approximately 1 minute later, a 6-armed Terminator armor, towering 3 meters tall, appearing like a small metal mountain, quickly materialized with a very conspicuous metallic body. At this moment, Roche tightly gripped the green glowing blood scythe in both hands, quickly assuming a combat-ready offensive stance. However, even his sudden arrival did not provoke any retaliation or warnings from the enemy. "David, can you receive my signal?" Roche, wearing a rhombus-shaped helmet, said faintly into the internal communication channel. He also looked down at the automatic servo robot, constantly waving its mechanical tentacles, as if it were communicating. "My lord, your signal is clear and strong, and you won't believe it, but my direct distance from you does not exceed 100 kilometers. According to the comprehensive analysis of the map information, your location should be deep in the Black Sea seabed. Moreover, based on the preliminary reconnaissance by the servo robot, there seem to be no signs of life within a few hundred meters." Iron Man David, who had already taken control of the automatic servo robot, quickly said to Roche. Hearing the reply, Roche subconsciously shook his rhombus-shaped helmet. He murmured in a low voice. "No wonder Leviathan wanted to desperately hold onto control of Latveria, it turns out they've been hiding nearby." "I understand, David, let's start moving too." As soon as Roche finished speaking, the automatic servo robot, controlled by Iron Man David, once again rushed out of the dimly lit metal hall. Roche, on the other hand, tightly gripped the blood side with its green glowing, sharp blade, slowly driving the Terminator armor forward with heavy steps. Soon after, the automatic servo robot, acting as a trailblazing vanguard, began to advance continuously along the narrow corridor covered in purple metal. Roche, on high alert, followed the robot at a measured pace, guarding against any potential enemies. Unfortunately, even as Roche and Iron Man David's automatic servo robot were about to reach the end of the entire corridor, they still hadn't discovered any traces of enemy presence. "My lord, there are faint signs of life directly ahead, and according to the design of a cosmic spaceship, that should be the bridge of this alien spacecraft." At this moment, the reminder from Iron Man David reached Rock's ears. Roche, wearing the rhombus-shaped helmet, nodded slightly. He took a deep breath and drove the Terminator armor towards the direction of the bridge. Several dozen seconds later, Roche and the automatic servo robot slowly entered a metal hall that was still dimly lit. Looking around, the environmental form and spatial scale here were exactly the same as the previous metal hall. And the only difference was, a tall chair standing in the center of the hall was slowly turning towards Roche. Buzz buzz buzz. This undoubtedly made Roche extremely vigilant. He unhesitatingly activated the shield generator of the Terminator armor. The 4 servo-mechanical arms located above the power backpack also roared into action. The green Aura ED Necron burst rifle and the humming multi-melta, along with the other 2 storm bolters, were already ready to fire. "I knew that those 12 Zodiac fools wouldn't be able to stop you from coming, guests from the Terra Star Realm Legion." At this moment, a cold voice slowly transmitted from inside the tall chair, also faintly echoing in the spacious metal hall. At the same time, a humanoid skeleton, tightly bound to the tall chair by countless purple metal conduits, was also very clearly presented within Rock's visor range. "You are the leader of Leviathan, Gemini." Roche, impassively, gazed at the humanoid skeleton in the center of the hall through his visor and asked calmly. However, neither the heavy logging gun of the automatic servo robot, nor the powerful firepower on the Terminator armor showed any intention of moving even slightly. "Having been called Gemini for so long, I have almost forgotten my own name. But that doesn't matter anymore." At this moment, the humanoid skeleton, seemingly unable to move, uttered a cold sigh with no tonal inflection. "Let's talk about terms. I admit that sending the 12 Zodiacs to contact your Terra Star Realm Legion was a reckless decision. If you need any compensation, I can try my best to make up for this wrong decision. I can hand over control of Latveria, and most of Leviathan's low-level agents can be handed over to you for disposal. Whether you want to recruit them, disband them, or terminate them, it's up to you. If you're still not satisfied, I can also share some unknown technology from aliens with you. Trust me, it's much more advanced than the technology on Earth." However, at this moment, before the humanoid skeleton Gemini could finish speaking, a faint sneer from Roche gradually resonated throughout the entire metal hall. "Advanced technology. Advanced enough to be slowly fused and devoured by an alien spaceship. Don't tell me you think I can't see that you're completely forced to sit on that thing, right? If that cancer guy's desperate attempt to die made me feel puzzled and surprised, Then the moment I saw you, I instantly understood the cause and effect. It's just another group of ignorant people who have brought disaster upon themselves because of greed. Oh right, that man named Uvarov asked me to tell you, that your debt with him is cleared. As soon as Roche finished speaking, the muzzle of the Necron burst rifle quickly bloomed with streaks of green light that annihilated all matter. No, wait, accompanying the terrifying wail that echoed throughout the metal hall. The humanoid skeleton on the tall seat almost instantly turned into flying green atoms. The next moment, the purple metal lines that were wrapped around Gemini rapidly changed. Those purple metal lines actually retracted completely into the interior of the tall seat like living things. At this moment, Luo Sha, wearing a rhombus helmet, stared warily at the tall seat not far away. He unhesitatingly drove the Terminator armor, leading the automatic servo robots towards the outside of the metal hall. Now, the leader of the Leviathan, Gemini, is dead. There are no more enemies inside this alien spaceship. In other words, the alien technology spaceship is already Luo Sha's trophy. However, after witnessing the tragic state of Gemini and Cancer, he was extremely wary of the technology and origin of this alien spaceship. Therefore, Luo Sha planned to leave this place first. Then let Redditus and others come to investigate and retrieve it. However, Luo Sha, driving the Terminator armor, walked through all the spaces on the alien spaceship. Besides finding the equipment room used to store alien armor, and the engine room that was invalidation due to missing parts, he couldn't find any access aisle to leave this place. This left Luo Sha, who had entered using the alien spaceship's teleportation technology, in a complete dilemma. Either let Doom or Redditus teleport in as well, and figure out the teleportation technology first. Or, just go all out and break through the spaceship bulkhead into the seabed with the blood scythe of the Necrons. Chi. Luo Sha casually wielded the green glowing blood scythe. He forcibly chopped it onto the nearby metal bulkhead. And the sharp edge did indeed embed itself easily as he had expected. It can be destroyed, now I can rest assured. Luo Sha slightly shook the rhombus helmet, muttering to himself. At this moment, Iron Man David from the automatic servo robot said to Luo Sha, "My lord, why don't you let me take a gamble with the automatic servo robot? See if I can obtain partial control of the alien spaceship. This way, you will be spared the worry of destroying the spoils of war. Even if my attempt ultimately fails, you will still need to destroy the hull to leave, it's just one automatic servo robot at stake." Hearing Iron Man David's words, Luo Sha lowered his head and pondered. In the end, he decided to let Iron Man David try. Soon after, the two of them returned to the dimly lit second metal hall once again. And that tall seat still stood in the central position of the metal hall. Iron Man David, having obtained Luo Sha's permission, carefully controlled the automatic servo robot to walk forward. It first used a metal tentacle to touch the metal surface of the tall seat. After discovering that it didn't trigger any subsequent reaction, Iron Man David unhesitatingly controlled the automatic servo robot to climb onto the tall seat. Zzz. In an instant, purple metal lines, like living metal, quickly wrapped around the automatic servo robot's body. Immediately afterwards, a surprised sound from Iron Man David instantly transmitted to Luo Sha's ears, making him even more vigilant. However, just as Luo Sha drove the 4 servo-mechanical arms and just raised the muzzle, Iron Man David's mechanical voice quickly came again from the communication channel. "My lord, I succeeded. Dash 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 dash." According to Iron Man David's statement, this alien technology spaceship now only has a metal shell left. The most important core program or the core components to start the engine have been missing for many years. And because the alien spaceship has lacked the necessary energy supply for a long time, it has a residual instinct of almost plundering any external energy. The long-term lack of energy has also caused the navigation log inside the bridge to be unable to update or record in a timely manner. More ancient information has almost disappeared. And the information that Iron Man David can currently find is some of the things that Gemini of the Leviathan has recorded through half-guessing and half-guessing over the years. For example, the opponent barely used the ability to piece together and retrieve text to figure out the naming of this spaceship, Crimson Centurion. Luo Sha wasn't too concerned about this. He asked Iron Man David if he could start the alien spaceship's teleportation technology. After Luo Sha received an affirmative answer, he immediately had Iron Man David prepare accordingly. Wang. Dozens of seconds later, as a purple energy halo-like code gradually enveloped the tall Terminator armor, the automatic servo robot that was firmly bound inside the tall seat, the engine energy in its body immediately dropped by more than a third. At the same time, the scenery in front of Luo Sha quickly changed. Wearing the Terminator armor, he actually successfully left that uncomfortable alien spaceship. Luo Sha glanced left and right through the helmet visor. Only then did he realize that he hadn't directly returned to Harlem City, but was standing near a port located outside the city. Sorry, my lord, it's the first time using the teleportation technology, there was a slight error in the coordinates. At this moment, Iron Man David's mechanical voice transmitted to Luo Sha's ears once again. David, it's fine as long as the matter is resolved. Remember to let Redditus come and see if the teleportation technology can be extracted later. To be honest, my animal instincts are very repulsed by the internal environment of this alien spaceship. If it's not necessary, after extracting the teleportation technology, find a way to seal it up. Understood, my lord, if you are not too worried about this, I will have Redditus try to destroy this alien spaceship after completing the mission. Yes, David, in short, you take care of it. Luo Sha ended the communication with Iron Man David. He also drove the Terminator power armor towards Harlem City, which had a completely different atmosphere than before. Along the way, the corpses and dilapidated buildings that were once everywhere have now been basically cleaned up by the united efforts of the crowd. Since Latveria is currently implementing a food rationing system, so, except for young children and the elderly who are really unable to move, the vast majority of people have followed the command of the resistance army and started to build a new home to the best of their ability. Currently, all the external troubles of Latveria have been eradicated by Luo Sha and others. What remains is to recuperate and develop rapidly. Until one day, the people here need to offer their loyalty to Luo Sha himself and the Emperor. The news of Latveria's successful liberation is but a trivial matter in the eyes of the world. Perhaps some interested research experts and countries will pay closer attention. But more often than not, few people specifically focus on the changes taking place in a small European country. Therefore, not many people notice that a considerable amount of food, supplies, and ordinary daily necessities, and even more heavy military equipment, are gradually flowing into Latveria. In fact, this is just a small portion of the resources Iron Man David mobilized through the operating methods of Imperial Heavy Industries. And even these insignificant resources are enough for a small country with a population of less than 1 million to live the life of a developed country ahead of time. In just 1 month, the people of Latveria completely regarded Doom, the leader of the resistance, as the country's highest leader. However, Doom did not seem to be obsessed with this. He even made Zola the first female prime minister of Latveria. And he himself hid behind the scenes to remotely direct. Zola, who was busy and overwhelmed, vaguely expressed incomprehension and dissatisfaction. But Doom stared at the streets, at the automatic servo robots that were carrying building materials. He said meaningfully to Zola, "When I was young, my mother once warned me that everything comes at a price. I just paid some price in advance for the survival and future of Latveria, and judging from the current situation, perhaps I did not make the wrong choice. By the way, Zola, from now on, a pair of golden double-headed eagles will be printed in the middle of Latveria's national flag. This is a suggestion Mr. David gave me. He said that Luo Sha himself may not care about these things, but someone may be very happy. Mr. David also said that perhaps ordinary disasters in the entire country cannot be avoided, but once the blessing is effective, it is a life-saving method. Although I think this is just a political method for Mr. David to declare sovereignty in place of Luo Sha, there is no harm in printing a golden double-headed eagle on the flag. Instead, it will deepen the connection between the two parties, so I readily agreed. And after listening to Doom's words, Zola, who subconsciously rubbed her brow with 2 fingers, looked at the man in front of her with a very helpless expression. She hesitated slightly and sent the matter of changing the flag out. The people under me will handle it. Victor, are you planning to abandon us and choose to leave? No, to be precise, I'm going to follow Luo Sha to his base for some further study. During the time I'm away, Mr. David will remotely assist you in handling some related matters. If it involves bad things that require the use of force, I will also rush back to deal with it immediately. You don't have to worry about this. At this moment, Doom, who was gazing out the window, slowly turned around. He said lightly to Zola, who looked worried. I know that many people now, including you Zola, think that the current Latveria belongs to me, Doom, but from the day I led the resistance to rise up, I have never thought about similar things. Perhaps some of my methods or ways of doing things are a bit radical, but the ultimate goal is just to make the people of Latveria live a good life. Doom's voice fell. His whole person seemed to fall into a state of silence, and his gaze once again turned to the window. And Zola had no intention of speaking. The 2 people accompanied each other so quietly. Soon after, when the first brand new national flag printed with a double-headed eagle slowly fluttered over the capital city of Latveria, now renamed Doom City. Valkyrie, who was gradually entering a state of invisibility, also slowly rose towards the sky and then quickly flew towards Twin Island. Dash 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 dash. 10 hours later. Along with the gradually extinguishing roar of the vector engine in the scorching heat, the Valkyrie transport plane slowly landed. Caw caw caw. As soon as the cabin door opened, a team of automatic servo robots wielding mechanical tentacles quickly surrounded them. They all disassembled the auxiliary power armor on the stormtrooper squad in an orderly manner amidst the chaos. At this moment, Luo Sha, with a smile on his lips, first waved his hand to refuse the automatic servo robots that came up to serve. He turned his head slightly and said to Doom next to him. Welcome to our team's Twin Island base. This is Longzi Island, one of our main bases. If you have free time in the future, I can also take you to visit Sizzy Island. There is our team's forging factory, which is specially responsible by Tech Priest Reditus. You should be interested in that. Hearing Luo Sha's introduction, Doom, wearing power armor, nodded slightly. He stepped out of the interior of the cabin and scanned the surrounding environment. A fleeting shock and uncontrollable curiosity instantly flashed in his eyes. David prefers to pursue the practical value of buildings. If you also like it, you can let him design a construction plan for you. I can approve a few hundred automatic servo robots for you, and it can be completed smoothly in less than half a year. Luo Sha raised his hand and patted Doom's heavy shoulder armor. He walked forward while saying without turning his head. Doom was slightly stunned. He then pondered for a moment and said, I do want to expand the mountain stronghold into a secret base. Whether it is for storing supplies or as a starting point for launching operations, it is a feasible thing. At this moment, Iron Man David, who walked out of the Valkyrie's cockpit, slowly came to Doom's side. It shook its metal head, and the blue light in its eye sockets flickered as it said, Mr. Doom, now is not the time to discuss these things. Why don't you follow me and let me arrange your living room? In the days to come, we will have time to discuss the development of the team, and you also need to meet some new friends. Doom nodded upon hearing this. He stared at Luo Sha's gradually receding tall figure. He turned his head to face Iron Man David and said with a light smile. Then I'll trouble you, Mr. David. Afterwards, Doom followed Iron Man David into the brightly lit metal passage. They went to the residential area in the Longzi Island base. During this period, a team of bare-chested gang dog members hurriedly carried a comatose man with broken legs towards other directions in the base. Perhaps noticing the doubt in the depths of Doom's eyes, Iron Man David said without turning his head. Those are the gang dog warriors who are undergoing daily training. They are also the basic team for our Lord to select elites for the Stormtrooper squad. If there are no unexpected circumstances, Mr. Doom, you will also join this high-intensity training. And hearing Iron Man David's words, Doom turned his head and stared at the faint bloodstains left on the metal floor. He took a deep breath and subconsciously let out a sigh. I'm already here. Due to its geographical proximity to the Antarctic continent, the terrain of Gemini Island is covered with ice and snow all year round, with clear weather only for 2 or 3 months each year. On the cliffs and precipices of the island, a group of bare-chested gang dogs were baring their teeth and constantly climbing towards the top in the freezing wind. Doom, wearing only a gray shirt and trousers, gritted his teeth and followed at the very back of the group. He kept moving his stiff, trembling hands and feet, clinging to the rough rock walls within his sight. The mist he had just exhaled was instantly blown into wisps of icy fog, striking the eyelids that were hard to keep open. Hey, new guy. You can't hesitate when climbing this thing, don't look forward and backward, just do it. At this moment, a gang dog who was very skilled at climbing with his hands and feet. The whole person, like a large gecko, darted towards the top of the rock wall and grinned at Doom. Doom trembled and turned his stiff neck muscles. But his blurred vision only saw a strong man with a missing front tooth brushing past him. Dozens of seconds later, Doom, with a slightly dazed look, couldn't even see the other person's backside clearly. Butter bread, roasted venison, chocolate, candy. Dazed, Doom suddenly gasped a breath of cold air. He stimulated himself by chanting high-calorie foods to stimulate his spirit. Regaining his energy, he mustered his courage and climbed upwards. As time went on, the speed at which many gang dogs moved forward gradually slowed down. They carefully moved their muscular bodies. Their outstretched arms, like agile apes, were constantly searching for safe and suitable footholds. Huff. At this moment, Doom, who was gradually catching up with the main group, couldn't help but exhale a breath of mist. He also began to learn the cautious movements of the gang dogs and continued to climb upwards. However, relying solely on willpower and newly learned rock climbing skills, Doom, who wanted to successfully reach the summit, was either distracted by the cold, or he simply didn't notice. One of his frozen hands inadvertently grabbed onto a rock covered with a thin layer of ice. Crap! Doom, whose fingers slipped, suddenly tilted backwards, which also caused his entire person to quickly fall downwards from the cliff. Truthfully speaking, Doom's reaction speed was not slow. The moment his rough fingertips touched the ice, he knew something was wrong. But Doom, who had never encountered a similar environment or situation, still fell into a state of daze due to human instinct. His entire body seemed unable to move at all. Even his already narrow focus was only left with a dim perspective capable of listening to the intense beating of his heart. However, at this moment, a gang dog located below Doom's falling path suddenly let out an angry roar. He firmly inserted his 2 feet and one large palm forcibly into the narrow gaps of the cliff face, constructing an extremely stable triangular structure with his entire strong body. Then he quickly reached out his other thick arm and grabbed Doom's shirt collar, and took advantage of the situation to throw the other person onto the cliff below. New guy. Exciting, right? Are you awake? The familiar greeting from the gang dog immediately brought Doom back to his senses. He quickly waved his stiff, trembling hands and feet. Like an octopus, he firmly grabbed the rock wall in front of him that was suitable for foothold. After truly confirming his safety, Doom, with his eyes wide open, subconsciously let out a burst of extremely rapid, violent panting. Only then did he gradually calm his heart, which was almost jumping out of his chest. You must know that even when Doom was captured by the Harlan army and suffered severe torture day and night, he had never been so frightened and helpless. Hey, new guy, are you stupid? You're scared by this little thing. I heard that our boss is still preparing a 7-day Antarctic tour. It is said that you will only be given a Kata-chan army knife and thrown into the depths of the Antarctic continent, and it will be considered qualified if you arrive at the scheduled location after 7 days. I really want to taste what polar bear meat tastes like. As if he hadn't heard any response, the gang dog above Doom's head roared loudly once again, also revealing the other party's snow-white teeth with a missing front tooth. Cough cough, friend. There are only penguins in Antarctica, no polar bears. It's not scientific to say that. There are 8 kinds of penguins in Antarctica, namely. Coming back to his senses, Doom took a deep breath of cold air. He blinked his eyelids and said, tilting his head with chattering teeth. However, before Doom could finish speaking, the gang dog with the missing tooth immediately shouted in great disappointment. What did you say? There are no polar bears in Antarctica. Alas, how disappointing. Forget it. We'll eat whatever we can find when the time comes. Before the other party's voice fell, the whole person immediately turned around and climbed towards the top of the cliff. Hee. Doom, who had been interrupted in the middle of his words, was stunned at first. Then a faint smile gradually appeared on the corner of his mouth. The fear and trepidation originally accumulated in his heart disappeared in an instant. Lying on the rock wall, he once again mustered his courage and cautiously climbed upwards towards the top of his head. Damn it. Bad luck. However, at this moment, a curse from above and the heavy sound of wind falling downwards instantly broke into Doom's senses. He almost instantly saw the familiar figure falling downwards. At this moment, Doom, with his eyes wide open, unleashed his powerful invisible telekinesis without thinking, quickly propping up the other party's strong body from below, and took advantage of the situation to place the other person on the nearby rock wall. The next second, the gang dog, who couldn't help but reveal his missing teeth, blinked his eyes in great confusion. He stared straight at Doom not far away, and said in a slightly teasing and complaining tone, in a low voice. Alas, brother, although I am very grateful to you for giving me a hand and saving my life, but you shouldn't have pulled me. Look down carefully, teams of Aoi monster guards are all ready to catch below, although everyone will also break their arms and legs due to the violent collision, but there are also small panaceas. People with more serious injuries will also be allowed to use the big panacea. I'm still counting on getting the status of a critically ill patient, so that the missing tooth in my mouth can grow back. And hearing the words of this toothless gang dog, Doom, with a smile on his lips, was slightly stunned. He first carefully glanced towards the ground below. Sure enough, he saw new types of robots, like snake bodies twisting back and forth, constantly patrolling the surrounding area. Afterwards, Doom, with a look of crying and laughing on his face, slowly withdrew his gaze. He looked at the gang dog in front of him with a serious expression, and said softly, "Friend, is the big panacea the kind of panacea you're talking about? Believe me, that thing won't make you grow new teeth, unless you already have teeth that haven't grown out yet." Brother, you know that too. Have you eaten it before? Yes, I've experienced it personally, and one of my molars that was knocked out before didn't grow back. Oh, damn, it seems that the Bane brothers, those 2 turtle sons, are using fake information to scam my allowance again. Let's go, brother. Let's quickly finish this project and go to the next project to block those 2. I'd rather split half of the allowance I get back with you. What did you say? There's another project. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Not far from the cliff face was a leeward area. Rorschach, with a white wolf fur cloak draped over his shoulders, stood with his arms crossed. He sat in a relaxed posture on a rough rock that had weathered wind and sun. At this moment, Iron Man David, blue light flashing in his eye sockets, was standing beside him. He shook his metal head as he grilled the steak in front of him. At the same time, he said in Rorschach's direction, "My lord, are you really so confident in letting Mr. Doom join the training team directly? Shouldn't he be given some time to adapt first? At least familiarize himself with the training program?" Rorschach, squinting his eyes, slightly raised his chin. He took a light sniff of the meat fragrance slowly dissipating in the cold air and said, "David, Doom is too smart, but sometimes, being too smart isn't a good thing, especially since he's a scientist and sorcerer who can build his own power armor. The dependence and habits he's developed in the past will make him subconsciously look for shortcuts to solve problems, but often, facing things head-on is the only way to solve them. Besides, he used to stand too high. Countless people have fawned over him since his student days and during the rebel period, and now he has become the spiritual leader of a small country. He may indeed be an idealist at heart, but some shortcomings cannot be made up for unless he experiences them himself. In simple terms, he needs to interact more with ordinary people, preferably make some friends and brothers. I even hope that Doom can select some gang members with magical talents from the remaining gang dogs to form his own stormtrooper squad. Wouldn't we have 2 action teams then? If everything goes well, I hope he can gradually grow into a marshal who oversees the overall situation in the future, rather than an ordinary commander or technical sergeant. That would be too wasteful. As soon as Rorschach finished speaking, he was staring into the distance. The cyan wolf pupils in his narrowed eyes suddenly contracted. Then, he saw that the small figure had successfully climbed back onto the rock wall with the help of others. Rorschach couldn't help but exhale a white mist that slowly dissipated, and said with a smile. "You see, David, this is a very good start. My lord, your barbecue is ready to eat." At this moment, Iron Man David, standing beside him, shook his metal head slightly. He handed a plate of barbecue emitting wisps of heat to Rorschach. Rorschach did not stand on ceremony at all. He raised his hand to take the barbecue and began to stuff it into his mouth. "My lord, would you like me to report on the recent situation at the base? Add some interesting facts to your meal." In the days we were away, Redditus has successfully repaired 2 Thunderhawk transport aircraft. According to him, blueprints and production lines are being prepared. At the same time, because the Rhino APC has a simple structure, the 4 production lines we now have can mass produce the required parts separately. However, the service life of the engine may be reduced by about 1/3 due to Redditus's lack of mastery of the technology, but it is completely sufficient for local operations. As for some other odds and ends, such as thermobaric bombs, the casting factory can also manufacture them in large quantities. I have already asked Redditus to separately plan an area to manufacture those dangerous explosives or heavily polluting items. When I have time, I will go and see how powerful the thermobaric bombs are. Rorschach tried hard to swallow the mouthful of food he had stuffed into his mouth. He moved his jaw and said to Iron Man David. Iron Man David shook his metal head slowly. With blue light flashing in his eye sockets, he continued. "Okay, my lord, I will notify Redditus in advance. And some alien technological items that were already stored in the wreckage of the storm need the shipboard AI Cortana to help identify and classify them. However, Redditus is indeed determined not to interact with her, so I need to handle this matter myself. Apart from that, there is no important news from the Twin Island base, my lord. The Americas have been very lively recently. Would you like to hear about it? Speaking of which, what has Tony Stark been up to recently? Why haven't I heard any news from him? What, did he completely wither after personally experiencing an extinction order?" At this moment, Rorschach, who was eating, suddenly stopped chewing. He squinted his eyes and looked at Iron Man David, asking casually. What I am about to say next is related to Mr. Stark, and it can even be said that his reckless behavior has caused a series of butterfly effects. Since the end of the slum incident, he has not left the American continent for a single step, and has been hiding in his home for a long time manufacturing his mechanical armor. According to Jarvis's unintentional revelation, the number of armors is almost enough to form 2 football teams. By the way, if you have personally seen the latest mechanical armor he is currently using, you will definitely be able to find a lot of inspiration for speed-type power armor from it. Rorschach, who had started eating again, sneered without raising his head. I'll ask him for royalties. David, continue. Okay, my lord, actually, the cause of the matter is very simple. A mechanical armor mercenary named Crimson Dynamo was jointly hired by fossil fuel tycoons because Stark Industries planned to promote clean energy, and launched a terrorist attack on Stark Industries' clean energy unveiling ceremony. Even if Mr. Stark was unwilling to go out, he had to come forward to stop it, but because he seemed to have not yet emerged from the psychological shadow, and his mental state was not very good, the scope of the battle with Crimson Dynamo expanded slightly, and thus affected some acquaintances who should not have been affected, such as our old friend. Hearing Iron Man David's words, Rorschach was slightly startled. He subconsciously said. Old friend. Don't tell me Thor ran to New York. My lord, you guessed right. Thor accidentally encountered the aftermath of the back-and-forth battle because he needed to accompany his mortal girlfriend, Ms. Jane, to a lecture conference at New York University. You also know Thor's personality, especially in front of his beloved woman, he naturally wouldn't let it go. Haha, let me guess, Tony must have been beaten badly by Thor, right? At this moment, Rorschach seemed to be completely focused on Iron Man David's narration. He no longer had the desire to eat the gradually cooling barbecue in his plate. My lord, you guessed wrong this time. The one who ultimately stopped the conflict was not someone else, but Captain America Rogers, who had temporarily disguised himself, and a team of agents led by a SHIELD agent code-named Hawkeye. Moreover, to some extent, it cannot be considered their entire credit, but rather the two foolish guys who were hot-blooded were the first to wake up, otherwise, the battle would have continued. Of course, the aftermath of this matter is not over yet. After all, I said this is a butterfly effect. By the time Luo Sha had finished eating all the meat brought by Iron Man David in intermittent bites, he had finally learned about the recent situations of Tony and the others. And the daily activities of the heroes and villains in the native world had also come to a temporary end. The mentally exhausted Tony compensated for all the losses caused by the aftermath of the battle. The seemingly rough but actually meticulous Thor also became ordinary friends with Tony and Rogers after their initial misunderstanding. The agents of SHIELD wanted to take the two of them in for questioning, but Rogers, as the leader of the team, had his own plans and prevented this from happening in advance. However, according to Iron Man David, Rogers and Tony had a brief meeting after the incident. After that, Tony's mental state seemed to have improved to some extent. Perhaps Rogers had found a goal for Tony to continue fighting, such as their common enemy, Hydra. It is foreseeable that the Hydra branch in the Americas will probably not have a good time in the future. At the same time, the news of Stark Industries being attacked by terrorists spread like wildfire in New York. Many local financial groups began to consider purchasing a certain level of special security services. However, not long ago, the Security Department of Imperial Industries had just completed a merger and reorganization with Silver Sable Security, a company from the small Eastern European country of Simcaria. The former Silver Sable Security was the largest and most professional security service company in the country. That is to say, in the coming period, the security services of many financial groups will be handled by Imperial Industries personnel. Rounding it off, it is equivalent to Luo Sha's personnel infiltrating the interiors of many financial groups. This is also one of the butterfly effects mentioned by Iron Man David. Just as Luo Sha was about to get up and return to the base, Iron Man David also revealed a trivial matter to him. That was that Luo Sha's former friend, Eugene, had unexpectedly joined the security department of Imperial Industries. Now, after experiencing a series of changes, Eugene had indeed undergone a complete transformation. He even started attending community college while working to earn money, and his grades were quite good. While feeling surprised, Luo Sha also asked Iron Man David to pay more attention to him and try to give Eugene a promotion and raise if the opportunity was right. Dash 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 dash. On the current Second Sun Island, the ice and snow have long melted. Many colorful mosses and low shrubs are almost everywhere. Located deep underground, the ultra-large forging furnace, which operates almost non-stop, emits terrifying heat, making the environment here incompatible with that of First Sun Island. At this moment, Luo Sha, draped in a white wolf fur cloak, led Doom, who had just finished his daily training, along a lush path. After countless baptisms of wind and snow, Doom seemed to have completely shed his past immaturity and disguise. His expression was more sincere, and he showed a smile more often than before. Doom, you will meet Tech Priest Ridatatasa of our team later. He only has a skull left after his flesh melted away. It can be regarded as a mixture of some kind of spiritual will and mysterious power. You don't have to be surprised about this. Luo Sha said to Doom without turning his head as he strode forward. Hearing Luo Sha's words, Doom couldn't help but grin. He shook his head and said, "After seeing the shipboard machine spirit Cortana and that power gauntlet that can run and jump, I have developed a considerable immunity to the special things I can see. I don't think there is anything that can surprise me anymore. Well, speaking of which, the gauntlets of Belial has a good impression of you. Many times, even I find it difficult to track its whereabouts. I simply don't treat it as a weapon anymore and just consider it an elusive alien pet raised in the base." Luo Sha said to Doom with a helpless expression. "Hello, teacher. Hello, handsome guy." Just then, Jessica, wearing power armor and carrying a power scythe on her shoulder, suddenly flashed past from midair. She quickly reversed her flight direction and landed heavily in front of Luo Sha and Doom. As the magnetic boots deeply penetrated the ground, they also splashed a lot of dirt outwards. Raising an eyebrow, Luo Sha glanced down at a few specks of mud on the white wolf fur cloak. He stared at Jessica, who was close at hand, with a blank expression and said, "Jessica, I've noticed that you've been living too comfortably lately. I'm wondering if I should also let you join the daily training of the gang dogs. Also, where did you get that power scythe you're carrying?" Teacher, I'm really busy right now. But I've never let go of combat training. As for this power scythe, this is a gift that Ledu Datasa gave me with great difficulty to thank me for my great help to the forging factory." Hearing Luo Sha's stern inquiry, Jessica blinked her eyes quickly. She carried the power scythe on her shoulder and shouted with confidence. Luo Sha's chin was slightly raised. He subconsciously folded his arms around his shoulders and stared at Jessica with a sneer, saying, "Oh, tell me, what have you been busy with lately? I asked you to supervise Ledu Datasa, but you accepted the gift it gave you. That's probably not right, is it? Teacher, David also knows about this, and he agreed too. How about this, dear teacher, why don't you come and see how my work has turned out? You'll understand how hard I've worked as soon as you see it." Jessica, with a stubborn expression, tightly hugged her power scythe. She retorted loudly to Luo Sha, who had a blank expression. At this moment, Luo Sha wasn't really angry. He just wanted to see what kind of tricks Jessica could pull off. So, he generously raised his hand and waved, signaling her to lead the way. Then, he took Doom, who had a watching the show expression, and followed Jessica, who flew into the air, towards the nearby coast. Soon after, the group arrived near the coast. Facing the vast sea, floating with a large number of white ice floes and surging waves, Luo Sha turned his head and stared at Jessica. He said in a calm tone, "Come on, let the show begin. Hee, teacher, just watch." Jessica, with a sly smile on her lips, shook her head and stepped forward. She stood tall and straight at the edge of the coast. Jessica casually took out a metal conch the size of a fist from the bottom of her power backpack, put it in her mouth, and tried her best to blow it. Buzz buzz buzz. The extremely low frequency, sharp sound made Luo Sha, who had keen senses, couldn't help but frown. However, just as Luo Sha was about to remind Jessica, suddenly, the sea in front of the crowd gradually rolled up a huge vortex. Countless ice blocks collided and shattered, emitting deafening and terrifying sounds. The next moment, a huge mud monster slowly poked out its upper body, which was as high as 20 meters, from inside the huge vortex. "Ha, teacher, come and see my labor results. This is the savior of the forging factory. The Candy King of Twin Islands, Lord of the Mines, Magnum." Jessica spread her arms wide and burst into laughter. She shouted excitedly at Luo Sha, whose eyes were gradually widening, and Doom, who couldn't help but open his mouth and had a dull expression, without turning her head. "Emperor on high. Jessica, what have you been feeding it lately? I seem to remember Magnum being less than 5 feet tall." Immediately shocked, Rorschach turned to Jessica and questioned her loudly. "Teacher, this is Magnum's special talent. In its mud form, it can ingest large amounts of minerals, sort and absorb the impurities, and then excrete refined minerals." Jessica grinned as she spoke. She waved her arm vigorously at Magnum, which resembled a small mountain. The next second, Magnum's massive mud body slowly started to wriggle, and it struggled to open its massive, black hole-like mouth. It continuously spewed out large amounts of refined minerals shimmering with metallic luster onto the nearby coast. Clack clack clack. Immediately afterward, automatic servo robots wielding mechanical tentacles quickly emerged from their hiding places. They picked up the refined minerals falling from the sky. Then, they quickly transported them back and forth towards the foundry. At this moment, Rorschach, squinting, stared at the massive magnum and took a deep breath. He saw Magnum briefly communicate with Jessica. And after waving its massive body in the direction of him and Doom, it submerged back into the turbulent sea. Blinking a few times, Rorschach turned to Jessica with a smile. He said helplessly, "Okay, Jessica, I admit your work is amazing. You can keep your power scythe. By the way, what did you two just discuss?" "Haha, thank you, teacher. Not long ago, Magnum accidentally discovered a new mineral. It once again demanded a price increase from me. In the past, 1 ton of ordinary minerals could be exchanged for half a kilogram of candy, but now the special mineral requires at least 5 kilograms. But for Redidus's foundry, I reluctantly agreed. Anyway, how to transport the candy is David's headache." Jessica, standing tall, carried her beloved power scythe. She said to Rorschach without hesitation, "New special mineral. Let's go ask Redidus about the situation." Rorschach raised an eyebrow and surveyed the coast. After discovering that all the refined minerals had been transported away by the automatic servo robots, he immediately called out to Doom, who had just regained his senses, and Jessica, and walked towards the entrance of the foundry. Soon after, the group entered the foundry, where the air temperature was much higher than outside. And in the foundry hall, filled with automatic servo robots and many shipwrecks, they found the very busy servo skull Redidus. Rorschach first introduced Doom to Redidus. Then, he immediately asked the servo skull floating in midair, "Redidus, where are the newly transported minerals stored? I heard you found a special mineral." "Aha, esteemed Primarch, your information is indeed well informed. Dear Jessica, I have prepared some new gifts for you. Servo robot number 3018 will take you to the location where the gifts are stored, go quickly." Redidus, with red light flickering in his eye sockets, first greeted Rorschach. Then, he began to issue a continuous series of eviction orders to Jessica. And after the excited Jessica followed the automatic servo robot out of the hall, the servo helmet Redidus then activated the anti-gravity engine and slowly floated in front of Rorschach and Doom. "Kid, your name is Doom, right? I heard you have a lot of research ideas about power armor. We can share a little later." "Ah, Primarch, we have indeed excavated a very special and precious mineral from the deep seabed near the island, please take a look." Before Redidus could finish speaking, an automatic servo robot carefully approached the group. And in its mechanical tentacles, a power longsword reflecting a faint golden luster was presented to Rorschach. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, feeling the simulator repeatedly sending signals, Rorschach forcibly resisted the urge to open it and check. He casually picked up the power longsword from the mechanical tentacles and looked up at Redidus and asked, "Redidus, is this power longsword made of the special mineral? What's so special about it?" "Special. Esteemed Primarch, I guarantee to you in the name of the Mechanicus and the Emperor, from now on, any power weapon produced by the human Imperium, if it does not contain this special mineral, then it is a pile of unwanted garbage. This power longsword, completely forged from the special mineral, even without being stimulated by the disruption field, the sharpness between the blades far exceeds the past, whether it is against the living metal of the Necrons, or against any metal material of the human Imperium, it can easily penetrate it." At this moment, Redidus, floating in midair, said to Rorschach with great enthusiasm. "Moreover, this power weapon forged from the special mineral, after being stimulated by the disruption field, even possesses the destructive power comparable to a phase blade. If the phase blade is because the technological level of the Necrons is too profound and extreme, then this special mineral we possess almost flattens the technological gap between the two sides from the source of manufacturing. You have technology, right? I have a mine at home." Hearing Redidus's continuous words, Rorschach, who had slightly narrowed his eyes, didn't even bother to care about Doom standing beside him. He unhesitatingly activated the disruption field of the power longsword. Buzz buzz buzz. The next second, the azure disruption field completely enveloped the entire blade of the power longsword. Rorschach glanced left and right at the surrounding environment. He immediately stepped forward and violently chopped at a piece of exposed adamantium dragon bone from a shipwreck. Chi. The azure blade, which had just come into contact with the adamantium dragon bone, instantly emitted a fleeting buzzing vibration. And the surface structure, as if liquefied, was easily vibrated open by the blade of the power longsword. Rorschach didn't even have to use much strength. The power longsword in his palm easily cut off a large piece of the shipwreck. Reditus, I will give you and Jessica a great credit. You are also approved to research and manufacture a new type of intelligent control legion robot. Rorschach, unable to help but reveal a brilliant smile on his lips, turned his head and said loudly to the jumping Reditus. By the way, do you have a new name for this special mineral? Omnizea be praised. Emperor on high. Thank you for the Primarch's generous praise. Through querying local mineral data, I believe this special mineral should be called vibranium. Antarctic vibranium. Inside the Gemini Island base. Luo Sha, with a white wolf fur cloak draped over his shoulders, walked through the interior of the passage, holding a golden power sword. He quickly entered his private room. After Luo Sha completely locked the heavy metal door from the inside. He squinted his eyes and couldn't wait to turn on the simulator that had been sending out signals. Open black lens bracket, new harmful substance detected. Antarctic vibranium metal, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, current quantity held, 20 kilograms, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, available resource time, 2000 hours, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, extract, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, currently discovered harmful substances, firearms, genes, cold weapons, magic, witchcraft, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, note. Please note that it takes a random time of 13 hours 13 minutes 13 seconds to 99 hours 99 minutes 99 seconds for the simulator to activate new functions, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, note. Please note that after the simulator activates more new functions this time, the simulator's main body will also undergo a more thorough change, and more functions need to be explored independently, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, note. Since the 5 harmful substances have been collected, if you insist on not updating the simulator, then many of the simulator's current functions will be temporarily suspended, and the internally stored materials can be extracted normally, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, note. In the far, dark future, there is only war in the universe, close black lens bracket. At this moment, Luo Sha subconsciously clenched the golden power sword in his palm. With a slight frown, he stared at the words on the simulator and muttered to himself. Stop using it if I don't update. Isn't this forcing me to update the simulator? Moreover, why do I feel like collecting 5 substances was a mistake? Could it be that the Emperor's psychic prophecy refers to this matter? Deep in thought, Luo Sha carried the golden power sword to the edge of the metal bed. With an uncertain expression, he slowly sat down on it. If he didn't update the simulator, whether it was the Astartes enhancement surgery that he had completed less than a quarter of, or the channels to obtain more technology would be completely cut off, and the loss would be considerable. However, Luo Sha was also afraid that after updating the simulator, the new simulator would produce other unexpected changes. For example, the chaos problem he was most worried about. Damn it. I'll just accept my fate. Isn't it just facing endless war? What am I afraid of? I hope the Emperor protects me, the Emperor protects me. As time gradually passed, Luo Sha, gritting his teeth, suddenly widened his eyes. He stared at the simulator in front of him and let out a low sigh. Extract. At this moment, Luo Sha, who had hesitated for a long time, finally, he chose to extract the Antarctic vibranium power sword in his palm. Open black lens bracket, ding, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, harmful substance detected. Antarctic vibranium metal, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, currently discovered harmful substances, firearms, genes, cold weapons, magic, witchcraft, metal, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket simulator will be re-downloaded. Open black lens bracket simulator updating, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket more new functions are being rebuilt, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket time consumed, 0 hours 0 minutes 13 seconds, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket please wait patiently, close black lens bracket. After the simulator began its unknown changes, Luo Sha, who had slightly closed his eyes, let out a breath of air. With an indifferent expression, he sat on the metal bed for a while, then got up and walked out of the room. Automatic servo robots. Bring me the Terminator armor and the phase sword. Luo Sha, who had just stepped out of the room, shouted in a deep voice to an automatic servo robot that passed by without hesitation. Soon after, as a team of automatic servo robots slowly dispersed, Luo Sha, who quickly put on the Terminator power armor, picked up the phase sword. He walked expressionlessly towards the lower part of the Gemini Island base. Dong dong dong. The heavy footsteps of the Terminator power armor continued to echo around. With a solemn expression, Luo Sha went directly to the core area of the base, which was the hidden location where he planned to place the ship-borne machine spirit. Buzz buzz buzz. As the bright lights gradually turned on overhead, on the metal walls around the wide passage, gradually appeared lines of prayer scriptures praising the Omnizeya and the Emperor, as well as slowly floating purity seals. After Luo Sha completely entered a circular metal hall. Right in front of him, a 5-meter-high Emperor metal statue, only half finished in its carvings, was clearly presented in his field of vision. Luo Sha, pursing his lips, stared at the Emperor statue, which was holding a flame sword with both hands. The face was blurred and silent. Then, he drove the Terminator power armor forward without hesitation. Dong! Along with a very dull sound of metal collision, Luo Sha, wearing the Terminator power armor, actually knelt down on one knee forward. He began an act of worship towards the unfinished Emperor statue that he had never done before. Emperor above, Luo Sha, who had slightly closed his eyes, placed the phase sword in his palm horizontally above his ceramite knee. His lips moved slightly, as if he was performing some kind of mental comfort work on the Emperor's statue, in order to eliminate the fear, anxiety and restlessness in his heart. Da da da. At this moment, Iron Man David, with a slightly bent metal spine, also stepped into the brightly lit metal passage, brushing past the lines of prayer scriptures and purity seals. It originally came to complete the finishing work of the Emperor statue. But after Iron Man David entered the circular hall, its blue light flickering in its eye sockets immediately saw Luo Sha, who was performing the act of prayer. Huh, my lord, how are you? However, at this time, before Iron Man David, who felt puzzled, could finish speaking, chi chi chi, along with a barely audible sound, the Emperor statue standing under the bright lights gradually began to show wisps of constantly floating black mist. At this moment, the blue light in Iron Man David's eye sockets began to jump rapidly. It hurriedly knelt down to the unfinished Emperor statue. Even its entire metal head dared not lift up in the slightest. Emperor above. At this moment, Luo Sha, who was kneeling on one knee, seemed to have entered a state of ignorance. The Emperor statue standing in front of him actually began to transform into a real form at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chi chi chi. The incredibly heavy golden power armor on the statue seemed to be brighter than before. Even the flames above the flame sword held in both hands seemed to rise up with wisps of blazing psychic flames. Huh. At this moment, Iron Man David, who was lying firmly on the metal floor, even its metal head dared not lift up in the slightest, seemed to hear some kind of murmur deep in its soul. It quickly said to the direction of the Emperor statue in fear and trepidation. Emperor above, thank you for your recognition, your humble servant is 100% loyal to Primarch Luo Sha. I understand, disaster is coming. Emperor above, your great glory will surely illuminate the entire Milky Way. Open black lens bracket ding, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket simulator update complete, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket many new features are restarting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket the simulation page has been replaced with Golden Throne close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: the consumption of simulation and other functions has been replaced with throne coins. Please explore the specific acquisition methods yourself. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The salvage page has been replaced with Pharos Lighthouse close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: the Pharos Lighthouse must be placed in a real-world location to be used. Please choose the location carefully. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: resource time has been completely consumed and will no longer be obtained from now on. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: all resource time has been converted into 10,543 ordinary salvages, greatly increasing the chance of obtaining valuable items. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: please go to the storage page to view the materials you have obtained. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. New special sacrifice page, Copper Throne Corn close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Blessing countdown, 88 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. New special sacrifice page, Garden of Nurgle close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: everything rots but nothing dies. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Blessing countdown, 77 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. New special sacrifice page, Palace of Slanesh close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: the brutal ecstasy will end in brutality. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Blessing countdown, 66 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. New special sacrifice page, Crystal Labyrinth Zinch close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: think long to know much to thirst for thought. Only holy Zinch, be not trapped. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Blessing countdown, 99 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. New diplomacy function page, please explore on your own close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. New legion management page, please explore on your own close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Simulator update time, 13 hours, 13 minutes, 13 seconds close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: from now on, you are the true chosen of the 5 gods, if you can survive their joy. Close black lens bracket. Hiss. About half a day later, Sha Luo, who had his eyes slightly closed, suddenly opened them. Everything within his field of vision instantly underwent extremely strange and bizarre changes. Rustle, accompanied by the sound of books turning, echoing in his ears. The simulator, which was originally like a transparent electronic page, had turned into ancient parchment. The simulation page, renamed the Golden Throne, was the first to appear. At this moment, a decaying living corpse located within a magnificent palace seemed to emerge before Sha Luo's eyes, as well as the massive metal creation that enveloped the decaying living corpse. And he seemed to truly hear the fierce cries of countless humans throughout the galaxy in his ears. For the Emperor, we beseech the God Emperor, save us. Cadia will never fall. The Emperor protects. Quote. In an instant, wisps of golden blood began to seep out from Sha Luo's eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and other orifices. Even deep within his throat, he couldn't help but burst out with an extremely tragic cry of pain. Fortunately, all the illusions quickly faded away. Only 13 of the most intense cries were completely branded into selectable text options. Open black lens bracket 1. Plea for aid from the Cadian sector. Fall of Cadia close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: please note that the Pharos Lighthouse is required to enter and exit the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: please note that since the support operation requires you to go in person, please bring the necessary weapons and equipment, and be prepared to prevent chaos corruption. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: regardless of success or failure, the basic support reward is 1 throne coin which can be exchanged for 1 simulation opportunity. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: the possibility of recruiting Astra Militarum Cadian shock troopers has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: the possibility of recruiting Chaos Forces Black Legion has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: current success rate of support, 0. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 2. Plea for aid from the Lamenters Chapter Slaughterhouse 3. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: please note that the Pharos Lighthouse is required to enter and exit the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: please be prepared to clean up the greenskin orc spores. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: regardless of success or failure, the basic support reward is 1 throne coin which can be exchanged for 1 simulation opportunity. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: the possibility of recruiting Astartes Lamenters chapter has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: the possibility of attracting greenskin orcs has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note: current success rate of support, 0. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 3. Plea for aid from Agrippina, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 4. Plea for aid from Nameless Hive, close black lens bracket. Ha. Sha Luo, struggling to widen his blood-red eyes, stared intently at the large amount of information presented on the parchment-like simulator page. However, before he had time to examine it carefully, those special sacrifice pages belonging to the 4 Chaos Gods also emerged one after another. The Copper Throne, the Garden of Nurgle, the Crystal Labyrinth, and the Palace of Slaanesh were completely spread out on both sides of the Golden Throne. In an instant, Sha Luo seemed to truly hear the low laughter from Khorne for the first time. The honest murmurs from Nurgle, the treacherous sneers from Tzeentch, and the lingering sighs from Slaanesh. Heh, you're right, I knew there would be a price to pay for all this. I just didn't expect it to come so quickly. He definitely isn't a good person, to be so generous to me, he must want something else. Quote. At this moment, Sha Luo, whose consciousness was gradually enveloped in murmurs, slowly raised his gray-haired head. He stared at the emperor statue in front of him with a pair of bloodshot, cyan wolf eyes. Sha Luo, with a ferocious expression, subconsciously bared the fangs in his mouth. He roared in a hoarse voice. Despicable living corpse. Dare to tell me in your own words. What exactly are you here for? Before Sha Luo could finish speaking, he propelled his Terminator power armor and quickly stood up from the metal floor. The phase sword, tightly held in his palm, unhesitatingly slashed towards the emperor statue that was close at hand. Da. However, at this moment, accompanied by the sound of rapidly approaching footsteps, the tall figure of Iron Man David suddenly rushed to Sha Luo's side. His eye sockets flashing blue light, he forcefully raised his 2 metal palms, firmly restraining the ceramide arms of the Terminator armor. My lord, please wake up. Sha Luo, with bloodshot eyes, immediately turned his gaze. He stared at Iron Man David beside him and growled through gritted teeth. David, let me go. My lord, everything the Emperor has done is for the survival of mankind, and also for your own good. Iron Man David, with blue light flickering in his eye sockets. The mechanical voice he struggled to produce seemed to carry a helpless tone. My lord, do you think he has any other choice? Do you have any other choice? My lord, we actually have no choice anymore. Please wake up from those true lies. In the next moment, Sha Luo, who suddenly let out an angry roar, quickly raised his other ceramide arm. However, the metal fist that swung up did not land on Iron Man David's metal head. Instead, it slammed hard into his own face. PFF'd. Accompanied by the golden blood splattering on the Emperor statue, the Emperor's blood within Sha Luo's body seemed to play a necessary role for the first time. He knelt on one knee, panting heavily. The stinging in his mind also finally broke free from the extreme thinking that had led him down the wrong path. David, Let go. Emperor be praised, I think I've completely woken up. Open black lens bracket ding, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket simulator update completed, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket many new features are being restarted, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket the simulation page has been replaced with, golden throne close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, consumption of simulation and other functions has been replaced with throne coins. Please explore the specific acquisition methods yourself. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket the salvage page has been replaced with, Pharos Lighthouse close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, the Pharos Lighthouse must be placed in a real-world location to be used. Please choose the location carefully. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, resource time has been completely consumed and will no longer be obtained from now on. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, all resource time has been converted into 10,543 ordinary salvages, greatly increasing the chance of obtaining valuable items. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, please go to the storage page to check the materials you have already obtained. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket new special sacrifice page, bronze throne corn close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket blessing countdown, 88 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket new special sacrifice page, garden of the plague lord Nurgle close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, all things decay, but life endures. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket blessing countdown, 77 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket new special sacrifice page, Palace of Slanesh close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, excessive pleasure will end in excess pain. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket blessing countdown, 66 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket new special sacrifice page, Crystal Labyrinth Zinch close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, seek and you desire to know and you thirst to seek, only holy Zinch can free you from this. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket blessing countdown, 99 individual group close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket new diplomacy function page, please explore on your own. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket new legion management page, please explore on your own. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket simulator update time, 13 hours, 13 minutes, and 13 seconds close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note, from now on, you are the true chosen of the 5 gods, if you can survive, their joy. Close black lens bracket. Hiss. About half a day later. Sha Luo, who had his eyes slightly closed, suddenly opened them. Everything within his field of vision instantly underwent extremely unfamiliar and bizarre changes. Whir, accompanied by the sound of books turning that echoed in his ears. The simulator, which was originally like a transparent electronic page, had actually turned into ancient parchment paper. The simulation page, renamed the Golden Throne, was the first to appear. At this moment, a decaying living corpse located inside a magnificent palace seemed to appear before Sha Luo's eyes. And that massive metal construct that enveloped the decaying living corpse. And in his ears, he seemed to truly hear the intense shouts of countless humans from across the galaxy. For the Emperor. We beseech the God Emperor to save us. Cadia will never fall. Emperor protects. Quote. In an instant, wisps of golden blood began to seep out of Sha Luo's 7 orifices, including his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Even deep within his throat, he couldn't help but burst out with an extremely tragic and painful wail. Fortunately, all the illusions quickly faded away. Only 13 of the most intense shouts were completely imprinted as rotating text options. Open black lens bracket 1. A plea for aid from the Cadian sector. The fall of Cadia close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Please note that the Pharos Lighthouse is required to enter and exit the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Please note that support operations require your true body to travel, so please bring the necessary weapons and equipment, and be prepared to prevent chaos corruption. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Regardless of success or failure, the basic support reward is 1 throne coin which can be exchanged for 1 simulation opportunity. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. The possibility of recruiting Astra Militarum Cadian shock troops has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. The possibility of recruiting Chaos Forces Black Legion has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Current success rate of support, 0. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 2. A plea for aid from the Lamenters Chapter Slaughterhouse 3. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Please note that the Pharos Lighthouse is required to enter and exit the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Please be prepared to clean up the greenskin orc spores. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Regardless of success or failure, the basic support reward is 1 throne coin which can be exchanged for 1 simulation opportunity. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. The possibility of recruiting Astartes Lamenters chapter has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. The possibility of attracting greenskin orcs has increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Current success rate of support, 0. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 3. A plea for aid from Agrippina. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 4. A plea for aid from an unnamed hive. Close black lens bracket. Ha. Sha Luo, desperately widening his blood-red eyes, stared intently at the large amount of information presented on the parchment-like simulator page. However, before he could carefully examine it, those special sacrifice pages belonging to the 4 chaos gods also emerged one after another. The Bronze Throne, the Garden of the Plague Lord, the Crystal Labyrinth, and the Palace of Slanesh were completely spread out on either side of the Golden Throne. In an instant, Sha Luo seemed to truly hear the deep laughter of Khorne for the first time. The honest murmur from Nurgle, the cunning sneer from Tzeentch, and the lingering sigh from Slanesh. Hee, you're right, I knew there would be a price to pay for all of this. I just didn't expect it to come so quickly. He is definitely not a good person, being so generous to me. He must want something else. At this moment, Sha Luo, whose consciousness was gradually being enveloped by mumbling, slowly raised his gray-haired head. He stared at the completely finished emperor statue in front of him with a pair of bloodshot, blue-green wolf eyes. With a ferocious expression, Sha Luo subconsciously bared the fangs in his mouth. He roared in a hoarse voice. "Despicable living corpse! Dare to tell me in person. Why have you come?" Before Sha Luo could finish speaking, his entire being drove the Terminator power armor to quickly stand up from the metal floor. The phase sword tightly gripped in his palm actually slashed towards the emperor statue in front of him without hesitation. Da. However, at this moment, accompanied by the sound of rapidly approaching footsteps, the tall figure of Iron Man David suddenly rushed to Sha Luo's side. Its eye sockets, with blue light constantly flickering, forcefully raised its 2 metal palms, firmly restraining the ceramide arms of the Terminator armor. "My lord, please wake up." Sha Luo immediately turned his gaze with bloodshot eyes. He stared at Iron Man David beside him and growled through gritted teeth. "David, let me go. My lord, everything the Emperor has done is for the survival of humanity, and it is also for your own good." Iron Man David, his eye sockets flickering with blue light. The mechanical voice he struggled to produce seemed to carry a helpless tone. "My lord, do you think he still has a choice? Do you still have a choice? My lord, we actually have no choice. Please wake up from those real lies." The next moment, Sha Luo, who suddenly let out an angry roar, quickly raised his other ceramide arm. However, the metal fist that was swung did not land on Iron Man David's metal head. Instead, it slammed hard into his own face. PFF'd. Accompanied by the golden blood splattering onto the emperor statue, Sha Luo's emperor's blood seemed to play a necessary role for the first time. He gasped for breath and knelt on one knee. The piercing pain in his mind also finally broke free from the extreme thoughts that had cornered him. David, let go. Emperor be praised, I think I've completely woken up. Among the many Chaos God's sacrificial rituals, Khorne's sacrifice is the simplest and easiest. As long as you offer the heads and blood of enemies, you can completely satisfy him. Sacrifices to Nurgle are also relatively easy. You only need to collect viruses and bacteria from the local world, as well as a series of related diseases, to barely cope. But the sacrificial rituals for Slaanesh and Tzeentch. Rockard, frowning slightly, read them over and over for a long time, but still couldn't figure out what they wanted. One requires offering the pinnacle of art or some kind of ultimate sensory pleasure. The other requires offering constantly changing strategies or widely circulated bizarre conspiracies. However, Rockard, whose thoughts were racing, instantly reacted. The Chaos God's sacrificial rituals still leave deadly pitfalls that one might fall into if not careful. The obscure and difficult Slaanesh and the damned Tzeentch can be put aside for now. Even Khorne's seemingly simple requirements must have set traps. Perhaps the first dozen or even dozens of sacrifices are very easy. But as time goes on, the number of sacrifices needed by the Chaos Gods will definitely increase. If Rockard remains unaware of this and continues to perform them, then he might eventually discover that slaughtering the entire population of a planet is not enough to satisfy Khorne's appetite. And Nurgle's sacrificial ritual is even more insidious. The Chaos Gods, after obtaining the disease matter from the local world, will definitely turn around and create even more terrifying plagues suitable for the local world. When the sacred number ends and blessings descend, even if he only blesses individual beings, it may still cause a widespread plague. Unfortunately, Rockard currently has no right to choose. He can only carefully consider which Chaos God poses a greater threat to the local world, so as to try not to let the other party's blessing threaten this place. Fortunately, there is still some time before the Chaos God's blessings descend. Rockard and his team still have time and opportunity to react. Dash 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 dash. A team of automatic servo robots wielding mechanical tentacles, under the control of the ship-borne machine spirit Cortana and Iron Man David, traverse back and forth throughout the Gemini Island base. Statues of the Emperor and countless prayer scriptures are almost all over the surrounding walls and ceilings. Even the servo skull Redditus, who occasionally goes out for some fresh air, couldn't help but sigh. The current Gemini Island base actually gives it a sense of returning to the Warhammer universe. At this moment, Rockard, who seemed to have returned to normal, sat in the center of the base hall wearing Terminator armor. While instructing the ship-borne machine spirit Cortana to increase the number of intelligent control legions, he also blatantly opened the simulator page, casually sorting out the salvaged materials that had just been added. Although Rockard's long-saved resources were reduced to zero overnight, but the final salvage also brought him a lot of valuable gains. For example, 4 sets of ancient power armor from the Blood Angels chapter and the Ultramarines chapter respectively, plus a 15 8-feet crisis battlesuit from the Tau Empire and a corpse of an ordinary Tau commander. He even unexpectedly obtained an ion rifle belonging to the Space Dwarves. However, all of the above things are just appetizers for Rockard. What made him completely focus his attention on the simulator page were 2 other powerful weapons that he never expected. Open black lens bracket Dawnbreaker, lost for 10,000 years Primarch weapon close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. This is a gift that the 18th Primarch Vulcan intended to give to Warmaster Horus, but Vulcan accidentally sensed the darkness brewing in Horus's heart, and he worriedly chose to take back this gift. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. This indestructible giant warhammer accompanied the fire dragon Lord Vulcan through several deadly crises, and the edge of the hammerhead seems to still retain the blood of a certain Primarch. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Tisk tisk, my lord is very much looking forward to your future. Don't worry, in order to pass through the psychic barrier of the sorceress undead, there are no signs of chaos corruption on it, it's just a hammer with symbolic meaning. Carlos the Weaver obeyed Zincha's order, divined the specific whereabouts of this warhammer, and specially gifted it to you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note, the size and weight of the Dawnbreaker far exceed all melee weapons. If you want to use it skillfully, you need strength close to that of a Primarch. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note, 80. 80. 80. Vulcan roared. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Plasma revolver, Forgeheart, Primarch weapon. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note, this plasma revolver, whose size is comparable to a standard bolter, was a sidearm given by Primarch Ferrus Manus to Primarch Vulcan. However, due to unknown reasons, Vulcan himself was quite indifferent to this sidearm, and only carried it for many years because it was a gift from his brother. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note, this plasma revolver can instantly fire 6 terrifying plasma bolts that destroy all armored vehicles, and can be fired again after a short cooling time. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note, this plasma revolver seems to have been blessed by the Orcish god Gork in Mork's wrestling, and the wielder has a certain chance to unleash several times the terrifying plasma without needing a cooling time. The corresponding price is that the wielder will be followed or challenged by a large number of green-skinned orcs. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note, green-skinned orcs chorus, Gork is brutal and cunning, Mork is cunning and brutal. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Note, 40. 40. 40. Vulcan muttered. Close black lens bracket. At this moment, Rockard, sitting next to the metal round table, couldn't help but widen his eyes. He took a deep breath and quickly got up, driving the Terminator armor, and walked towards the base training ground. Come on. A few minutes later, Rockard, who had just arrived at the training ground, unhesitatingly extracted the first Primarch level melee weapon from the simulator. As for the notes related to Zinch above, since the simulator or the Emperor did not specifically remind him, it means there is no problem. Even if there is a problem, it's just a demonic weapon. His tenacious will can withstand it. Rumble. In an instant, a giant warhammer whose hammer handle alone was nearly 1.8 meters long. The volume of the square hammerhead was almost comparable to the size of a Terminator ceramite shoulder pad, and it fell heavily on the metal floor, creating a series of terrifying cracks, and also making an extremely muffled collision sound. Taking a deep breath, Rockard immediately drove the Terminator armor and strode forward. He firmly grasped the thick hammer handle of the Dawnbreaker with both ceramite-clad hands. Lift. However, even Rockard, wearing Terminator armor, plus his own not-so-weak physical strength, he could barely lift this exceptionally heavy giant warhammer. It would be as difficult as ascending to heaven to wave it around in combat. At this moment, Rockard, whose face was gradually turning red, clenched his teeth hard. He exhausted all the strength in his body to lift the Dawnbreaker above his head, and then slammed it down heavily on the training ground. Rumble. Dong. The square, heavy hammerhead fell heavily. Rocher, clad in Terminator armor, also knelt on one knee. His 2 thick arms, encased in ceramite, supported the thick hammer handle, trembling slightly. Vulcan truly is the physically strongest of the Primarchs. How did he wield this thing with one hand? I'm completely exhausted after just one swing. Rocher, his face flushed red, stared at the crack spreading across the metal floor, reaching nearly 10 meters. He muttered to himself, judging from the current situation, it seems he won't be able to use this Primarch level melee weapon for quite some time. Rocher began to adjust his breathing rhythm, quickly recovering his depleted strength. About 5 minutes later, he casually released the thick hammer handle and slowly stood up, driven by the Terminator armor. Rocher frowned slightly and opened the simulator again. He extracted another Primarch level sidearm from it. Plasma revolver, Heart of the Forge. Buzz buzz buzz. In the blink of an eye, a revolver whose size and weight rivaled a standard bolter appeared out of thin air in Rocher's metal hand. He looked down and saw that the Heart of the Forge had an overall dark metallic sheen. Only the upper part of the slender barrel and the side of the ammunition cylinder were covered with a layer of green scales, resembling dragon scales. Besides that, there were no other decorations or configurations on the gun body. It was completely a scaled-up revolver. However, this also matched Ferrus Manus's steely and cold personality. If this gun wasn't meant as a gift for his Primarch brother, it's likely he wouldn't have even chosen to install the green scales. The Iron Hand's pragmatism. It suits my taste. Rocher pursed his lips and couldn't help but nod. He looked up and glanced around, finding several metal gun targets located at the edge of the training ground. Then, Rocher unhesitatingly raised the revolver, which only the metal hands of the Terminator armor could barely hold. Chi. At this moment, Rocher only pulled the trigger once. The heart of the forge's ammunition cylinder quickly rotated. 6 azure plasma balls shot out continuously from inside the barrel like arrows. And in the blink of an eye, they reached the metal gun targets in the distance, instantly erupting into a large, scorching plasma tide. Ding! Just then, the heart of the forge, which had just entered its cooling period, seemed to emit a crisp buzzing sound. The next second, before Rocher could continue pulling the trigger, another 6 azure plasma balls shot out from the barrel. Hiss! Rocher blinked a few times and couldn't help but gasp. He stared at the heart of the forge in his metal palm and muttered softly. Are the weapons blessed by Gork and Mork this terrifying? Indeed, things touched by orcs are completely unreasonable. As soon as he finished speaking, Rocher straightened his thick arm, gripping the revolver tightly. He continuously pulled the trigger of the heart of the forge on the training ground. Chi. In an instant, brilliant plasma balls bloomed one after another on the wide training ground. And after everything completely subsided, Rocher stared at the devastated training ground in front of him and shook his head slightly. He needed to pull the trigger an average of 5 to 10 times to successfully trigger a single burst of 6 to 12 plasma balls. Even so, this heart of the forge, which once belonged to Vulcan, had become one of the most powerful pieces of individual firepower he currently possessed. A faint smile appeared on the corner of Rocher's mouth. He contentedly hung the heart of the forge on the waist of his Terminator armor and turned to walk out of the training ground. As time passed, the entire Gemini Island base was filled with large and small statues of the Emperor and prayer scriptures. If Rocher didn't lack the black stone materials and technology of the Necrons, he would have transformed the entire base into a dead zone that suppressed psychic powers. However, now that the Emperor's gaze was almost constantly present, Rocher's sense of crisis regarding chaos corruption had slightly lessened. During this period, Doom, having finished his daily training, came to Rocher before heading to Sub-Island to exchange technology with Redditus. He also came to find Rocher, asking about the changes in the base. Rocher hesitated slightly and decided to reveal part of the truth to Doom. Of course, he also deliberately omitted the names of the Chaos Gods. He simply told him all about the heavy threat of chaos corruption and the existence mechanism of the warp demons. After Doom, with a heavy heart and furrowed brows, turned and left. Rocher, whose mood seemed much lighter, began to study the next step of his plan. Answering the call to aid is a task he must carry out, and a responsibility he cannot avoid. On a small scale, it concerns the acquisition of throne tokens, which are the source of the enhancement surgery and the technology needed for the development of his forces. On a large scale, this is his divine duty as a human Primarch. A living tool belonging to the Emperor, a currency to be used well. Of course, this currency also has its own joys, sorrows, and angers, possessing the power to slightly resist the Emperor's actions. Although absolute loyalty is absolute disloyalty. These words are only for the mortals and Astartes of the Warhammer universe. Rocher is, after all, a Gene Primarch, belonging to an exceptional situation. Soon after, Rocher repeatedly reviewed the 13 calls for aid. After much deliberation, he finally found a combat mission that was relatively simple. Open black lens bracket call for aid from nameless hive world tertium surging dark tide close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Please note that entering and exiting the Warhammer universe requires the assistance of the Pharos beacon. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Please note that an unknown rebellion is taking place in this hive world. Please assist the local defense forces in suppressing the heretics. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Regardless of whether the assistance is successful or not, the basic support reward is 1 throne token which can be exchanged for 1 simulation opportunity. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Hive World Local Defense Force recruitment rate increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Hive World Heretic Rebel recruitment rate increased. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Please note that there is only 1 round-trip opportunity for entering and exiting the Warhammer universe in person. If you accidentally miss the return opportunity, you must go to the mission location of another support prayer through the simulator to return. Therefore, please make any choices carefully. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. Current success rate of support, 0. Close black lens bracket. In addition, Roche, who was re-examining the simulator, also accidentally found other uses for the Legion Management page. At the very bottom of the Legion Management page, there was also a separate folded page. The interior was marked with 2 branch options: main combat personnel and weapons and equipment. And the branch option of the main combat personnel clearly presented Roche himself, wearing Terminator power armor, as well as the Space Wolf simulation body that had survived in the past. Through repeated exploration and attempts, Luo Sha finally figured out the specific uses of the Legion Management branch options. Apart from the Space Wolves simulacrum, which couldn't be controlled or queried for the time being, the success rate of each support prayer was supported by Luo Sha himself, his weapons and equipment, and auxiliary combat personnel. For example, for the Hive City support mission currently selected, the success rate of support achieved by wearing Terminator armor and carrying a large amount of ammunition was 50%. With the addition of a Stormtrooper squad, the success rate suddenly increased to 80%. However, the annotation prompt that subsequently appeared in the simulator also reminded Luo Sha that this was only the possibility of successful support. If he completely believed in this success rate, perhaps there would be a day when everything would completely fall apart. Moreover, Luo Sha didn't plan to bring any local personnel into the Warhammer universe, at least not yet. After all, offering loyalty in the face of a brutal battle was only a secondary issue. Chaos corruption was the biggest concern. Without the necessary countermeasures or more preventative measures, Luo Sha would, at most, use Iron Man David or the intellect-controlled Legion to escort him into the Warhammer universe. However, after determining the support target, Luo Sha did not set off immediately. This was his first time entering the Warhammer universe in his true body, and facing those terrifying battlefields, he had to be fully prepared. So, Luo Sha, deep in thought, activated his Terminator armor and stepped onto the underground passage leading to the forge. The first preparation he needed to make was to completely upgrade the 6-armed Terminator into a complete set of power armor. When Luo Sha arrived at the forge hall on the island of the Second Sun, he immediately saw Doom disassembling a set of ancient power armor in front of the forging platform. "Doom, where's Reductus?" Luo Sha stepped forward. He glanced left and right, and asked Doom, who was completely focused. Lord Luo Sha. Reductus said it encountered a research bottleneck, and to calm its mood, it ran off to torture those automated servo robots. Doom shook his head helplessly and said to Luo Sha. Hearing Doom's explanation, Luo Sha nodded subconsciously. While beckoning to the automated servo robots nearby who were carrying materials back and forth to come forward and disassemble the Terminator armor, he said to Doom in a solemn tone. "Doom, go find it and bring it back. I have important things for you to do." Doom raised an eyebrow and immediately nodded in agreement. He casually wiped the grease from his palm and turned to run towards the assembly line of the forge. Soon after, Reductus, driving an anti-gravity engine, rushed back to the forge hall. Before it could exchange a few pleasantries with Luo Sha with a playful smile, Luo Sha, standing in place disassembling the armor, unhesitatingly expressed his request to Reductus. The six-armed Terminator armor needed a complete upgrade. Any combat functions that the original Terminator armor possessed needed to be reinstalled. Servo Skull Reductus did not refuse. It hesitated slightly and said to Luo Sha, who was surrounded by automated servo robots. Respected Primarch, with our current production capacity and technical capabilities, your request is not difficult. If you are willing, I can integrate the technology I currently possess and tailor a more advanced set of Terminator power armor for you. Reductus, I only have one request for you. On the basis of not destroying any combat functions, optimize as much as possible where optimization is possible, and add as many new functions as possible. Oh, by the way, what is the smallest volume of tactical nuclear weapons that you can currently manufacture? At this moment, Luo Sha, whose gaze pierced through the mechanical tentacles, suddenly asked Reductus. Smallest volume. I can barely reduce the volume of a tactical nuclear weapon to about half a meter, weighing about 30 kilograms. But in this way, not only will the explosive yield only be about 50 tons, but the kill radius will even be far greater than the launch distance, which is simply not worth it. Hearing Luo Sha's question, Reductus, whose eye sockets flashed red, floated back and forth in the air, and it asked in a puzzled tone. Primarch, I haven't heard of any action missions in the base recently. What are you going to do with this thing? Don't ask about the specifics. I will choose a suitable opportunity to tell you. When recasting the six-armed Terminator armor, just make one for me, and set the detonation mode to both remote detonation and launch detonation. Luo Sha, squinting his eyes, expressionlessly instructed Reductus. After he completely took off the Terminator armor, Luo Sha gave Reductus and Doom, who had just returned, a few more words of caution. Then, he turned and left the forge hall, leaving only Reductus and Doom to begin discussing how to upgrade the Terminator power armor. Dash 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 dash. After Luo Sha returned to the island base of the First Sun, he immediately went to find Iron Man David without stopping. At this moment, Iron Man David was directing a team of automated servo robots to carry out the final decoration work on the Emperor statue. It rotated its metal head and, looking at Luo Sha who was walking towards him, said with blue light flashing in its eye sockets. My lord, do you have something you need me for? David, there's something I want to discuss with you. Luo Sha slowly stopped. He looked directly at Iron Man David in front of him and said without concealing anything. Thanks to the Emperor's blessing, I can now travel to your old home through miracles. In order to obtain more powerful strength and precious technology, and also for the responsibility that I, as a Primarch, cannot escape. To be honest, I don't feel very safe taking other people there, so I want you to follow me back to the territory of the human empire. Of course, if you have any concerns, I won't force you. After all, this is not an order, but a request between friends. Hearing Luo Sha's sincere words, Iron Man David, whose eye sockets flashed blue, bowed to him without hesitation and said, My lord, I am your most loyal servant. Since you don't mind, then I am naturally willing to go with you. It is also my honor as a wanderer from another world to occasionally go back and see my old home. However, there is one thing that you must not have considered fully, and that is whether I, as an Iron Man, will cause some unnecessary trouble if I rashly go to the human world. After all, just the coveting and greed from the Adeptus Mechanicus might put you in a difficult dilemma. David, you are my loyal servant, and the other Imperial forces are not your objects of loyalty. If they are not afraid of death, then let them come. Of course, I have actually thought about the problem you mentioned, and I have also temporarily found a solution. Luo Sha stared at Iron Man David in front of him. A faint smile slowly appeared on the corner of his mouth. Inside the brightly lit circular hall, the floor, walls, and ceiling are densely covered with prayers praising the Emperor's spiritual power. Nearly 2/3 of the mind-controlled legion are loaded with ammunition. They encircle the edge of the circular hall. More automated servo robots carrying melta-bombs and heavy lumber guns are even lined up in the corridor outside the hall. At this moment, accompanied by the prayers repeatedly broadcast from the mind-controlled legion, Loxia, draped in a white wolf fur cloak, solemnly walks through the mind-controlled legion. He walks straight towards the emperor statue in the center of the circular hall. After Loxia arrives at the designated location, he stares at the emperor statue in front of him, which seems to be rising with wisps of spiritual energy. He opens the simulator page without hesitation. Buzzing. Instantly, the surrounding air seems to be filled with continuous low buzzing and trembling vibrations. On the metal floor covered with prayers, a black lighthouse whose full appearance is not completely revealed slowly rises from the unknown void, revealing the pyramid-shaped spire. And just the spire, emitting a cold, hard light, almost touches the ceiling of the circular hall, which is tens of meters high. At this moment, Loxia, squinting, stares at the huge black stone creation that seems to be completely integrated with the metal floor. He can't help but take a deep breath. This black lighthouse standing in front of him is the beacon that can enter the Warhammer universe, the Pharos Lighthouse. And according to the information in Loxia's memory, the Pharos Lighthouse is a superspace beacon built by the Necrons using black stone technology. And it is completely unaffected by the power of the warp. Most of the mind-controlled legion are suppressed here, plus the Emperor's constant gaze. There shouldn't be any problems, right? If there is time, let Radiatus manufacture a few super-yield nuclear bombs and install them around the hall. Relying on only a few hundred melta-bombs as a last resort is still not reassuring. Loxia, squinting, glances around at the mind-controlled legion, which remains motionless. The weapon muzzles and mechanical tentacles are always ready to fire, he thinks to himself. With his thoughts turning, he solemnly gives an Aquila salute in the direction of the Emperor statue. Then, without looking back, he walks out of the circular hall. Dash 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 dash. According to Loxia's original plan, the circular hall was supposed to be the place to house the shipboard AI Cortana. Unfortunately, compared to the preciousness and danger of the Pharos Lighthouse, artificial intelligence doesn't seem to be that important anymore. Moreover, the Pharos Lighthouse is more likely to be on the Emperor's mind than artificial intelligence. After Loxia leaves the depths of the base, a message from the Forge world of the Second Sun Island makes him get up and go there again. Soon after, Loxia, draped in a white wolf fur cloak, steps into the Forge hall. At this moment, the servo skull Radiatus, driving an anti-gravity engine, floats towards him to meet him. Aha, esteemed Primarch, after the diligent efforts of me, Radiatus, and the meek boy Doom, your Terminator armor has been successfully manufactured. Before Radiatus finishes speaking, Loxia, striding forward, sees at a glance the huge metal creation whose ceramite shell has not yet been painted. At this moment, the 3-meter-tall Terminator power armor stands tall on the forging platform like an immovable fortress. If the previously updated Terminator power armor only had some simple ironclad Terminator styling, then the current Terminator armor, judging from its appearance alone, it is completely in the form of an ironclad Terminator. Before Loxia can ask Radiatus, hovering in midair, immediately says incessantly, Primarch, this ironclad Terminator took a lot of our effort. If it still can't satisfy you, then we have no way. Haha. Then I'll start with the metal skeleton. Although the adamantium skeleton of ordinary Terminators is very strong, it is still not in line with your noble status compared to the Uru metal skeleton you possess. So, at the suggestion of the meek boy Doom, we plan to use Uru metal and adamantium to conduct some material fusion experiments, wanting to forge a special alloy that combines the advantages of both. However, perhaps because the Uru metal came from the destroyer's wreckage, or because the meek boy Doom used a lot of witchcraft, in short, the Uru metal, which was accidentally stimulated by internal energy, produced a special change with adamantium that we have never seen before and cannot replicate at all. Not only has the strength of the skeleton been increased several times, but even the weight has been reduced a lot. This special alloy, called Uru adamantium, even has a considerable degree of witchcraft immunity. Of course, we don't know if it will work against psychic powers. Radiatus, driving the anti-gravity engine and circling around, continues to say like a giant fly. With the most basic and most important metal skeleton done, our next task is a little simpler. Newly manufactured electronic muscle bundles and carefully debugged servo devices, full power shield generator, very important life support devices and many detection systems have been successfully loaded. Among them, the life support device is not filled with ordinary medical liquid, but the panacea that Konas specifically requested to be liquefied. That is to say, even if you suffer a fatal injury, you can be resurrected on the spot with full health. However, all of the above are just the basics. What highlights our strength more is the servo-mechanical arm. The Meat Boy Doom ingeniously used Antarctic vibranium to forge 4 servo-mechanical arms and the hand parts of the power armor. As long as you activate the disintegration field connected to it, you wearing the Terminator armor can completely transform into a terrifying melee monster. However, this is just one of your life-saving methods after you have exhausted your ammunition. The Gauss burst rifle and multi-melta, as well as an ion rifle as a sniper weapon, plus the storm bolter, will still provide you with very amazing ranged firepower. If you still think the firepower is not enough, a whirlwind missile launcher can also be installed on the shoulder platform of the ironclad Terminator, of course. At this moment, Loxia, whose gaze has always been fixed on the 6-armed ironclad, temporarily interrupts Radiatus's words. He takes a deep breath and says loudly with a smile. Very good, even far beyond my imagination. By the way, Radiatus, have you ever seen the armor paint scheme of the Salamanders chapter? Hearing Loxia's question, the servo skull hovering in midair seems to be slightly stunned. Ah, Primarch, what do you mean? That's right. Radiatus, dye this thing green for me. Just as Luo Sha and Rinnegan were talking. In another corner of the forge hall. A blood-red power armor with the markings of the Blood Angels, with the help of the servo-mechanical arm behind Doom. For the first time, he took a heavy step forward. Then, the unknown driver raised an arm covered with ceramite and removed the metal helmet, revealing a metallic head shimmering with a dark luster. At this moment, Iron Man David, with blue light flickering in his eye sockets, focused his gaze on Doom in front of him. Mr. Doom, have the miniature nuclear bombs and melta bombs been installed? Hearing Iron Man David's inquiry, Doom, shaking his head and chuckling, grinned and said, Mr. David, according to your request, the miniature nuclear bombs have been installed below the power backpack, and the disposable launchers are also suspended behind the power backpack. The 2 sets of detonation devices are just above your ceramite wrist, ready for use at any time. As for the gaps inside the power armor, they have been filled with melta bombs without affecting the posture, with a quantity of about 25. Before Doom could finish speaking, a hint of hesitation seemed to appear on his face. Then, Doom, with a slight frown, lowered his voice and asked Iron Man David. Mr. David, what exactly are you and Lord Luo Sha planning to do? I feel like you are planning to carry out a suicide mission. But as far as I know, there haven't been any events that threaten the team or the base itself, have there? The doubt from Doom made Iron Man David slightly shake his metal head. It said meaningfully to Doom in front of him. Without the permission of my lord, I will not reveal anything to you. However, as the team's steward, I still need to remind you that the era of peace has led most of you humans into a false misconception, believing that the right to survival is inherent to humans. Perhaps you think that a war between a region or a country is cruel enough, but you have never fought for the survival of the race. Alright, that's all I can tell you. If everything goes smoothly, you will also join in. I hope you can be prepared for everything. Perhaps when that day comes, you may also be holding a miniature nuclear bomb and not letting go. Iron Man David raised a metal palm and gently patted Doom on the shoulder. Then, it drove the power armor, walking towards Luo Sha and Rinnegan. At this moment, Doom, standing in place and slightly lost in thought, suddenly let out a fleeting murmur. The chaos demons of the warp and the 4 conceptual chaos gods. If Earth also has to face this extreme situation, the power and influence our team currently possesses are probably not enough. Perhaps, I need to contact my old classmates from the past to obtain some necessary technological support, but what excuse should I use to convince them? Sigh, headache. Inside the forge hall, the painting work of the six-armed Iron Rider Terminator is in progress. Servo Skull Redatitas directs a team of servo robots, revolving around the power armor, not letting go of any hidden corners. At this moment, Iron Man David, whose armor paint has also been changed to green, used its control over metal substances to create a battle banner about 3 meters long. However, in addition to the black dragon head logo of the Salamanders chapter, there is also a golden double-headed eagle logo. Soon after, Luo Sha, who had changed into a black bodysuit, returned to the forge hall. With a solemn expression, he stood in place with his arms crossed, quietly waiting for the painting task of the six-armed Iron Rider to end. Since Luo Sha didn't know what kind of scene he would face when he first entered the Warhammer universe, he had to be prepared to face any situation. Therefore, changing the paint of the power armor to the Black Templars chapter, which has a very friendly reputation and style, is also a way to solve the problem. After all, not every hive governor on every planet has seen the Emperor's Angels, the Adeptus Astartes. Luo Sha even planned to change his appearance to that of Alpharius, in order to reduce unnecessary conflicts or contradictions. Several hours later, along with a team of automatic servo robots surrounding him, Luo Sha took a deep breath and stepped forward. He spread his arms, letting the metal components of the six-armed Iron Rider Terminator fall one by one on his entire body. After the installation was successfully completed, Luo Sha moved his hands and feet and exchanged a few words with Redatitas and Doom. He immediately led Iron Man David, who was carrying the battle banner, out of the forging factory without looking back. During this period, Luo Sha, driving the Terminator armor, also had Iron Man David explain some things to the shipboard machine spirit Cortana. Whether it is the operation of Imperial Heavy Industries or the operation of the Gemini Island base, everything remains the same. If any major event occurs that endangers the team or the base itself, Jessica, Doom, Bucky, and the most loyal, Mariko, will share command. Jessica and Bucky will lead the ganghounds and stormtrooper squads to be responsible for combat matters. Doom and Mariko are responsible for the overall coordination and command. The reason why Luo Sha made such an arrangement, it is entirely to restrain the accidental situation that may occur. However, he firmly believes that these team members under his command are not short-sighted people. Most importantly, I am afraid that the Emperor himself will not allow things to develop to an unmanageable point. Therefore, Luo Sha is not too worried about temporarily leaving the Gemini Island base. So, Luo Sha and Iron Man David, who were ready to depart, went directly to the equipment room. About an hour later, the heart of the forge and a master-crafted bolter were hung on the waist of the six-armed Iron Rider. Luo Sha, carrying the Blood Reaper and a box of bolter ammunition behind the power backpack, stepped into the underground passage leading to the Pharos lighthouse. And Iron Man David, also wearing green power armor, carrying a super phase sword above the power backpack, he followed behind Luo Sha, carrying the battle banner. Dong dong dong. Along with the heavy footsteps of the power armor, the two arrived in the circular hall surrounded by the Thinker Legion without saying a word. Boom. At this moment, Luo Sha, wearing a green metal helmet, knelt on one knee in front of the Emperor statue without hesitation. According to past simulation experience, he began to pray silently to the Emperor. Dozens of seconds later, Luo Sha took a deep breath. He immediately opened the Golden Throne page of the simulator, resolutely chose the prayer support task that had been set. Buzz buzz buzz. Thank you all for your support. The massive Pharos lighthouse emitted a series of deep, roaring hums. The sound was so loud that it briefly suppressed the constant chanting of prayers around it. Within the range of Rosha's visor, the incredibly fragile spatial structure seemed to be twisting and deforming. Crack, accompanying the sudden appearance of a spatial rift. Vague shadows of battle and slaughter faintly appeared in the surrounding air. Rosha widened his eyes subconsciously. He wanted to see clearly the specific appearance of the blurry shadows. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, an irresistible, powerful suction force suddenly appeared on Rosha and Iron Man David's green power armor. They didn't even have time for a final communication. They were completely sucked into the unknown space inside the suddenly opened spatial rift. However, even the smart control legion closest to them was not affected in any way, not even a twitch of their metal limbs. Kakaka. After Rosha and Iron Man David's tall figures disappeared one after another. The instantly healed spatial rift also completely vanished without a trace. If it weren't for the automatically playing prayers resounding once again, it would seem that all the changes that had occurred before were just illusory phantoms. Dash 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 dash. Humph. Rosha, wearing a metal helmet, couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. His entire body was violently tumbling and spinning, as if he had been thrown into a tumbling washing machine. At this moment, his field of vision only contained layers upon layers of strange, interwoven black and white radiance. There was nothing else besides that. Thump. After who knows how long, accompanied by the vibrating sensation and loud noise of magnetic boots heavily stepping onto the ground. Clusters of steel buildings hidden in a gray mist gradually appeared within Rosha's visor range. Even the internal air, repeatedly filtered through the breathing valve, still carried a nauseating, pungent odor. At this moment, Rosha's reaction, still in a state of dizziness, could be said to be extremely swift. Without hesitation, one of his palms picked up the furnace heart hanging at his waist, and a finger gently placed on the trigger. My lord, the air here seems to contain extremely serious toxin pollution. Human bodies can barely metabolize it, but will suffer very painful sequelae. Just at this moment, a mechanical voice from Iron Man David made Rosha, whose vigilance had risen, breathe a sigh of relief. He slowly drove the six-armed Iron Rider Terminator to turn around, looking towards the green power armor that always followed behind him. David, we succeeded, Rosha said to Iron Man David in a calm tone. And Iron Man David, carrying the battle group banner, slightly shook his ceramic steel-encased palm. While scanning the surrounding environment, it said to Rosha, "Yes, my lord, we have successfully returned home. If I am not mistaken, this may be the outer perimeter of a hive city's mid-hive. Those gray mists are not some kind of natural phenomenon, but rather high concentrations of industrial pollution toxins. Have we arrived at a hive world specifically responsible for industrial production?" Hearing Iron Man David's words, Rosha, wearing a metal helmet, once again scanned the unfamiliar surrounding environment. This was also the first time he had seen a hive world of the human Imperium. Apart from the steel building clusters pieced together like building blocks, many giant mechanical creations, with volumes comparable to mountains, were operating back and forth, emitting a series of rumbling roars like those of giant beasts. At the same time, Rosha also noticed, he and Iron Man David had been teleported to the top of a building's rooftop. It's just that because the ground was covered with a thick layer of dust, it looked like they had arrived in a desolate area on the outskirts of the hive city. But in fact, they were already deep within the hive city, even standing on top of a part of its buildings. My lord, what shall we do next? Should we directly execute the purpose of your trip, or? Iron Man David, carrying the battle group banner, stepped forward. It walked to the edge of the building's rooftop, peered a few times into the deep space below shrouded in heavy gray mist, and turned to ask Rosha. And Rosha slightly shook his metal helmet. He said thoughtfully, "Let's go to the upper hive first, and contact the local planetary governor. We know nothing about the current situation, and rashly taking action may cause unnecessary conflicts." As soon as Rosha's words fell, Iron Man David reached back from the rear of the power pack and drew out the super phase sword emitting green light. It rotated its gaze and scanned back and forth. Then, without hesitation, it repeatedly cut at the building's rooftop under its feet. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, on Rosha's right hand's ceramic steel gauntlet, a numerical phantom marking 30 appeared out of thin air. Rosha only glanced down, and immediately understood the meaning of the number. Regardless of whether the Hive City's rebellion is successfully suppressed, is the support mission completed after 30 days? I guess the spatial rift will also appear on time by then. Rosha, wearing a metal helmet, muttered to himself. Subsequently, his attention was completely focused on Iron Man David's cutting actions. dash 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 dash. Thump, accompanied by a half-meter thick metal ceiling heavily landing on the ground. The six-armed Iron Rider Terminator's massive metal body also quickly plummeted down. Immediately afterwards, Iron Man David, wearing power armor and carrying the battle group banner, entered the interior of the building. Rosha scanned the dim space around him, piled with many discarded metal parts, through his visor. Without a word, he began to move his heavy steps towards the exit of this place. Squeak. Not long after, the metal door, which seemed to have not been opened for a long time, gradually emitted a harsh rubbing sound. While slowly rising upwards, the dim light from the outside world also completely shone into the dim space where dust was rising and falling. Thump thump thump. Rosha, holding the furnace heart in his palm, drove the six-armed Iron Rider into a very wide passage corridor. At this moment, the life detection device inside the helmet instantly issued a necessary reminder to him. Just outside the corridor corner not far from him, a large group of life signs was quietly staying in place, not moving at all. David, that direction, try not to open fire, let's see who the other party is first. We need them to point out the route to the upper hive for us. Rosha said to Iron Man David, who had just stepped into the corridor, without turning his head. Subsequently, he immediately drove the six-armed Iron Rider towards the end of the corridor. However, when Rosha, wearing Terminator armor, had just turned the corner of the wall. Damn it, it's Astartes. Everyone, open fire. Accompanied by a fierce shout that resounded all around. Streams of scorching lasers poured down like torrential rain towards Rosha's metal body. At this moment, Rosha, facing the sudden attack, did not produce much emotional fluctuation. He didn't even activate the Terminator's shield generator. He just quickly raised the furnace heart in his palm and forcefully pulled the trigger. Buzz buzz buzz, Chapter 378, Surging Undercurrents Green Fire Angels 2. No member of the local defense force would hesitate to open fire on a strange Astartes. Unless they could confirm that the person before them was a Chaos Astartes. Or, they themselves were a group of rebels who had abandoned humanity and the Emperor. Chi chi chi. The heart of the forge, tightly gripped in his palm, instantly ejected 6 azure plasma spheres. The extremely high-temperature fluid traversed the corridor in the blink of an eye. Forcibly piercing through the metal barricades hastily erected by these rebels, as well as the fragile bodies behind. Accompanied by the rising and falling cries of numerous enemies. But the tragic howls abruptly ceased. Rorschach slowly propelled the six-armed iron steed forward. The heart of the forge in his grasp did not cease firing for a moment. Chi chi chi. This heart of the forge, blessed by Gork and Mork, quickly triggered an extremely terrifying plasma tide. Completely engulfing the Hive City rebel force, numbering in the hundreds. By the time Rorschach walked in front of the rapidly melting, charred corpses, the rebels in front of him had basically been wiped out. At this moment, Rorschach, slowly lowering the heart of the forge, shifted his gaze. He lowered his head to look at a rebel officer beside him, whose lower body had been completely melted by the high temperature of the plasma, but who had not yet died. And uttered a sentence in broken imperial language. Pitiful traitor, why did you betray the Emperor and humanity? Why did you initiate this Hive City rebellion? Hiss, you are just a dog of the tyrant of Terra. You are not worthy to know anything. At this moment, the rebel officer, his facial muscles constantly twitching in pain, struggled to raise his neck. His veins bulging, he gnashed his teeth and roared angrily at Rorschach in front of him. Seeing that he couldn't extract any valuable information, Rorschach unhesitatingly raised a heavy magnetic boot and stomped down hard on the rebel officer's head. Crack. Afterward, he turned and said to Iron Man David, who was carrying the battle group's banner forward. These rebels are probably ambushing other squads. They gathered here after hearing our movements. David, search for nearby short-range communications. We need to find friendly forces inside the Hive City. Understood, my lord. As soon as Rorschach finished speaking, Iron Man David, shaking his metal helmet, immediately lowered his head and searched. Soon after, he unhesitatingly pointed out the direction of advance to Rorschach. Rorschach casually took a bolter pistol from his waist. Carrying the dual pistols, he followed Iron Man David and strode quickly into the depths of the passage. At this moment, in a spacious Hive City plaza, streaks of scorching laser fire continuously streaked across the air, repeatedly impacting the reddened and heated metal barricades. At the same time, the roar of human bolter pistols rose and fell. Incredibly precise shots eliminated Hive City rebels who accidentally poked their heads out. The next second, a veteran Astra Militarum soldier wearing old carapace armor changed the magazine of his human bolter pistol. Without turning his head, he shouted to the back, "Ogren, bring up the ammunition crate." "Oh, ah." Before the veteran's voice faded, an Ogren, towering at 2 meters 6, forcefully carried a crate of extremely heavy bolter ammunition. He swayed his stout and sturdy body, and rushed to the back of the metal barricade in just a few steps. However, before the Ogren could bend down to put down the ammunition crate, streaks of scorching laser fire instantly focused on the Ogren's huge body. Almost in the blink of an eye, it pierced through his upper body into a front-to-back sieve. For the Emperor. The Ogren seemed to utter his last murmur. Then, the Ogren, completely losing his life, fell heavily to the ground with a loud crash. Dong! The ammunition crate that fell from his shoulder almost hit the veteran hiding behind the barricade. Damn it! Is he so stupid that he doesn't even know how to bend over? A trace of sorrow flashed in the veteran's eyes as he cursed loudly at the nearby bloated corpse. Without thinking, he extended the human bolter pistol out of the metal barricade and pulled the trigger forcefully. "Hey, Baldy, where's our support team? You've been fiddling with the communicator for so long, have you contacted anyone?" At this moment, the veteran, his brow furrowed, shouted loudly at a bald woman wearing a metal eye patch. "Don't you understand yet? We were thrown in by the Inquisitor as suicide troops to probe the rebels' movements. There has been no support from the beginning," the bald woman wearing a metal eye patch said to the veteran in a cold tone. "The Ogren is an ignorant fool, you are a habitually fleeing deserter about to be shot, and I am just a low-level psyker brought down from the Black Ship by the Inquisitor. Whether it is for the Empire or the Hive City itself, we are just a group of disposable waste products. The so-called atonement is just an excuse to fool the Ogren. Do you still have any hope for this?" Hearing the cold words of the female psyker, the expressionless veteran abruptly retracted the human bolter pistol that had run out of ammunition. His eyes staring blankly at the scarlet blood gradually spreading to his side, he muttered to himself, "I'll tell you one last time, I was never a deserter. When our entire company was planning to fight to the death, I was accidentally stunned by the heretics' bombardment. But, when I woke up completely, I was already imprisoned. They judged me as a deserter on the battlefield without any explanation, and even got the damn unit number wrong. Forget it, it doesn't matter anymore, I'm going to accompany the brothers in the company." The veteran, with a look of fatigue on his face, slowly closed his eyes. He didn't replace the magazine in the human bolter pistol in his palm. He just slumped behind the barricade, maintaining a state of sitting and waiting for death. "This is also good, everything is relieved, maybe I can return to the Golden Throne." However, just as the bald female psyker wearing a metal eye patch subconsciously picked up the metal scepter in front of her, and was about to get up and engage in a final battle with those rebels. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the deafening roar of bolter explosions rapidly came from other directions of the Hive City Plaza, constantly echoing in the sky. The tragic wails and terrified shouts from the rebels also made the veteran, who was waiting for death with his eyes closed, and the bewildered female psyker look at each other subconsciously. Baldy, didn't you just say there were no reinforcements? Then who is fighting with the rebels now?" The veteran blinked his eyes. He asked his only companion with a puzzled expression. "I'm sure there are no reinforcements. Because I once used psychic powers to eavesdrop on the conversation between the Inquisitor and the Governor." The female psyker's tone also became hesitant. The next second, the two people actually poked their heads out from behind the metal barricade at the same time. Braving the risk of being accurately headshot by scorching laser fire, they cautiously looked towards the location where the fierce battle continued to come from. "Damn, Is this the Emperor manifesting his power? Why are even the Salamanders Astartes here? It's over. We're doomed. Thank you all for your support. Boom boom boom. Solid bullets from heavy lumber guns. Like a rainstorm, they collided with the massive ceramite shell of the six-armed Terminator, sending countless sparks flying. Rorik, rotating his metal helmet, reacted quickly. He immediately activated the shield generator, greatly increasing the level of protection against ranged firepower. Buzz buzz buzz. The next second, accompanied by countless solid bullets intercepted by invisible force fields and the constantly exploding, dazzling lasers. A servo-mechanical arm behind Rorik's power pack suddenly rotated. The Gauss burst rifle, with its green light swirling inside the barrel. Without hesitation, it unleashed a continuous and terrifying bombardment towards the rebels' firing points. Chi. In the blink of an eye, streaks of brilliant green light swiftly streaked across the sky, easily penetrating the metal bunkers of the firing points. Completely obliterating the combat personnel inside, along with the entire heavy lumber gun, into particles of dissipating green atoms. At the same time, Iron Man David, carrying the battle group's banner on the back of his power pack. With super phase swords tightly gripped in his two metal palms, he launched a terrifying charge towards the rebels' battle line with astonishing speed, just like a true Astartes. If Rorik, clad in the six-armed ironclad Terminator, was like an immovable fortress of firepower, then Iron Man David, whose strength and reaction speed far exceeded ordinary Astartes, easily dodged the rebels' firepower coverage like a nimble Eldar warrior, crashing straight into the rebels' position. Although Iron Man David seemed unwilling to cause more bloodshed, even the super phase sword repeatedly danced in his palm, only used the flat of the blade to swat away the rebels blocking his path. However, the complete chaos in the rebels' position also provided Rorik with excellent firing conditions. In an instant, the bolter in the heart of the forge, tightly gripped in his palms, unleashed another terrifying bullet storm. Zzz. When countless dazzling azure plasma tides had almost covered the entire rebel position, Rorik drove the six-armed ironclad Terminator to quickly stow away the two firearms. He reached back and drew the blood scythe from the back of his power pack, its sharp blade wreathed in green light, unleashing an extremely cruel and insane slaughter on the remaining rebels who had not collapsed. However, with the end of this battle, some situations that Rorik found puzzling and surprising also followed. Even though these rebels resisted to the last man, there wasn't much fear on their faces, only the glory of fighting to the death and the relief of impending death. If they weren't rebels, I would have thought I'd seen a famous regiment of the Astra Militarum. At this moment, Rorik, holding the blood scythe in his palm, lowered his head and glanced at the broken corpses scattered all over the ground. He slightly shook his metal helmet, emitting a fleeting murmur from within. Subsequently, Rorik, who had returned to a state of silence, drove the six-armed ironclad Terminator towards another position in the Hive City Plaza. Dong dong dong. Soon after, accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps gradually approaching. Behind those, several metal bunkers covered with bullet marks and laser scorch marks. A guardsman wearing old carapace armor and a bald woman wearing a psychic amplification device timidly revealed themselves. Before Rorik could open his mouth to question them, the two people, seemingly having exchanged a glance, unhesitatingly placed their hands on their chests and knelt on one knee in Rorik's direction. Angel, thank you for saving our lives. Rorik, wearing a metal helmet, looked down at the two people in front of him through his lenses. He glanced over the guardsman's constantly blinking purple eyes and subconsciously asked, "Are you Akkadian?" Akkadian 423rd. 2nd Armored Company Gunner Hassan. Akkadia stands. Hearing Rorik's question, the guardsman veteran, who had previously carried a hint of timidity between his brows, immediately straightened his back. He shouted loudly without hesitation. Rorik slowly shook his metal helmet. Remaining silent, he shifted his gaze to the bald woman. "Your turn, hem." Just at this moment, Rorik, with his keen senses, seemed to clearly perceive a very subtle psychic fluctuation emanating from the bald woman. However, just as he tightened his grip on the heart of the forge, his vigilance heightened, and the blood scythe was about to be swung. The bald woman, who had quickly withdrawn her psychic powers, suddenly raised her lowered head. Even with the shielding of the psychic amplification device, it still couldn't stop the extreme shock from showing on her face. This is impossible. Angel, you are actually a primar. No matter what you saw or know, if you don't want to die, keep it buried in your stomach. In an instant, Rorik swiftly raised his hand. The blood scythe, its sharp blade wreathed in green light, instantly rested on the side of the bald woman's shoulder. Interrupting her words, it seemed as if it would slice off her entire head in the next second. Thank you for your generous pardon. Respected angel, I, as a humble psyker, implore you to save us and save the innocent people of this hive city. At this moment, the bald woman, her expression constantly changing, instantly prostrated on the ground. She pleaded respectfully, as if she had found a life-saving straw. You don't need to tell me that, that's exactly why I'm here. Now, you need to tell me what exactly happened in the Hive City. Why did the rebels launch this rebellion? Rorik's metal helmet slightly shook as he casually withdrew the blood scythe. He looked down at the two people in front of him through his lenses and asked in a calm tone. Thus, Hassan, the Cadian corporal, and Lucy, the female psyker. From their perspective, they began to tell Rorik about what had happened throughout the Hive City. Located on the Atoma homeworld, Tertium Hive is the most important industrial planet in the Mebian domain. It is also one of the production worlds for the Lehman Russ tank. But not long ago, the Mebian 6th, which had just withdrawn to the Hive City for repairs, launched an attack on Imperial forces. No one knows why they instigated this rebellion, the only certainty is that they chose to occupy the underhive of Tertium Hive, repeatedly launching continuous attacks on the mid-hive, where the Lehman Russ production lines were stored. In order to protect the necessary production lines, the Planetary Defense Forces actually forcibly sealed off some of the passages between the mid-hives, choosing to rebuild defensive positions. As for the unlucky Corporal Hassan and the Psyker Lucy and others, they were merely sacrifices randomly thrown in by the Inquisitor who came to investigate the rebellion to probe the rebels' movements. Through conversations with the two unlucky individuals, Roche gradually confirmed something. That is, Tertium Hive City still possesses defense force units and corresponding strength to suppress the rebellion. However, due to various unknown reasons, neither the planetary governor nor the Inquisitor who came to investigate seemed willing to pay any price to completely eliminate this rebellion. This also strengthened Rock's determination to make contact with the upper hive. Perhaps from the perspective of ordinary civilians, he is indeed an angel of the Emperor. But from the perspective of the planetary governor and the Inquisitor, a sudden, mysterious Astartes space marine is probably an unstable factor comparable to a rebellion. Most importantly, Roche does not have a suitable imperial identity to obtain command authority in the Hive City. Dong, dong, dong. Iron Man David, clad in power armor, stepped forward and approached Roche. After reporting the situation on the ground to Roche through the communication channel, Iron Man David's gaze seemed to fall on the two people in front of him. Which of you knows the way to the upper hive? To eliminate this rebellion, we must obtain the necessary command authority to mobilize the local defense forces to suppress the rebellion. Oh, Angel, you do not know, to prevent the rebels from seizing Lehman Russ tanks or destroying the most important production lines, the planetary governor has ordered the destruction of most of the passages between the middle and upper hives. Even the only large elevator leading to the upper hive has been heavily fortified with defensive positions and local defense forces. As far as I know, they have only one order, which is to prohibit anyone from entering the upper hive. Even if you are an Astartes, an angel of the Emperor, sometimes, your noble status is not so useful. The Psyker Lucy showed a wry smile. She explained to Iron Man David. And I, as a Psyker servant of the Inquisitor, once accidentally learned some things that could be considered secrets. Perhaps even one of the reasons for the Morbian Sixth's rebellion is related to the planetary governor. I mean, the rebels may have ultimately chosen to betray due to a series of oppressions. As the Psyker Lucis voice fell, Roche, who was listening intently, slightly shook his metal helmet. He said in a low voice, "Now is not the time to pursue the source of the rebellion. If there is indeed no way to get to the upper hive, then we must try to fight our way through the local defense forces. However, if we do so, the remaining trust between the two sides will be completely shattered, and we will only be able to rely on ourselves to suppress the rebels afterwards. Wait, Angel, I think I have an idea. At this moment, the veteran Hassan, who had been silently listening with his purple eyes, seemed to remember something. His face showed an expression of excitement filled with agitation, and he looked up at Roche and said, "Before, when a few of us passed by a factory workshop, I seemed to have seen a hovercraft undergoing repair work. If we can ride the hovercraft, then we don't have to go to the upper hive through the internal passages of the hive city. We can fly directly to the top from outside the hive city." As soon as the veteran Hassan finished speaking, Roche, wearing a metal helmet, nodded without hesitation and said, "We can try it. Sergeant Hassan, lead the way." Thus, after simply gathering their weapons and ammunition, the group immediately rushed to the factory workshop mentioned by the veteran Hassan. Soon after, in the factory above a casting platform, a luxurious hovercraft with a metal shell painted gold appeared within Rock's field of vision. At this moment, Iron Man David, who stepped forward to check, glanced at it a few times and turned to Roche and said, "My lord, the space inside can barely fit your Terminator and my power armor. However, there are no defensive measures or weapons on it. If we encounter the Hive City's anti-aircraft fire, we can only rely on flight speed to make a thrilling escape." Hearing Iron Man David's words, Roche, wearing a metal helmet, shook his head. He said in a low voice, "David, when necessary, you can hijack the Hive City's communication channel and tell them our chapter identity. If it doesn't work, then find a way to force a landing. Once we land, everything will be out of their hands." "Understood, my lord." Iron Man David, clad in power armor, casually folded up the chapter banner and placed it behind the power backpack. It quickly opened the cockpit of the luxurious hovercraft and began to try to start the internal engine device. At this moment, Roche slightly turned his metal helmet. He gently waved his ceramite hand at the two people with uneasy expressions on their faces. "Get in the car. Try to squeeze in." "Ah, Angel. Thank you again for your kindness to us." Hassan and Lucy looked at each other and bowed to Roche. Immediately afterwards, the two immediately entered the passenger space of the luxurious hovercraft. And in order to make room for Rock's six-armed Iron Rider, the veteran Hassan even picked up the expressionless Lucy and tried to curl up in the corner. Rumble, rumble, rumble. After the anti-gravity engine of the luxurious hovercraft gradually emitted a low hum. Roche, who received a reminder from Iron Man David, also drove the six-armed Iron Rider and tried his best to squeeze into the interior of the hovercraft. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the next second, the luxurious hovercraft controlled by Iron Man David slowly floated into the air. After simply adjusting the driving direction, it immediately sped towards the outside through the passage of the Hive City. Soon after, the luxurious hovercraft with golden light flashing between its shells plunged into the depths of the heavily layered great poisonous fog. Quickly unfolded its flight posture towards the top of the Hive City. However, just as the luxurious hovercraft had just passed through the extremely thick gray poisonous fog, and Roche saw the charming warm sunlight of this Hive City planet for the first time in his field of vision. Dee dee dee, along with a warning sound that resounded throughout the interior of the hovercraft. The mechanical voice from Iron Man David quickly transmitted to Rock's ears. "My lord, the Hive City's anti-aircraft fire has locked onto us. The information identification I sent to the other party did not receive any response." At this moment, Roche, wearing a metal helmet, looked through the porthole of the hovercraft. Quickly scanned the very magnificent and spectacular architectural complex of the upper hive. Then, he issued a crazy order without hesitation. "David, give me an emergency crash landing on the most luxurious and conspicuous building. It would be even better if we could find the location of the planetary governor." For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.